across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there and good morning to you, my lovely creatures. It's wonderful to have your company. This is Alex Phillips with you until 1 o'clock today, back in her usual slot. I have missed it here. It's a nice sort of civilised time of day, isn't it, to be ranting and raving about the world, and it's lovely having you to keep me company during this session of Communal Catharsis, because do you know what I've realised? I woke up this morning and looking through some of the headlines today, I've realised that as a nation there are so many mentally ill people. I mean, it's gone balmy. It's gone bonkers. Either I'm the mad person, every day's April the 1st, or there are some seriously sick and twisted wastrels running things in this country. What is going on? I mean, seriously, what is going on? How have we become so collectively soft and soppy to the point of actual senility? What is this? What is that? I cannot fathom anymore the state of this country, how the mighty, intrepid, stiff upper-lipped British have become a country that hands out free cars, put people breaking in four-star hotels, offers people who are supposed to be deported because they're criminals and ne'er-do-wells lessons on how to make balloon sculptures. I mean, what is this? Is this just a collective nervous breakdown? Am I the only sane person left? I mean, I was going to say the lunatics are running the asylum. What is very clear is there are lunatics running asylum centres. I need your help today, because we can't go on like this anymore, can we? We cannot go on like this anymore. There are way too many absolutely mad, mentally or twisted individuals with some crazy ideology based on some sort of level of sociopathy that's got to be studied in history books. You know, like the decline of the Roman Empire, the end of the West, when Britain started to hand out flower arranging to people being deported for violent crimes. What is going on? Please offer me support and I will do the same back. Let's make this like a kumbaya therapy session, shall we? 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. It's your normal network rate if you'd like to lay on the psychologist's couch with me. You can also use that number to send me a WhatsApp or leave me a voice note on WhatsApp. I like a good voice note. Please ping them over. 87222 is the number. If you'd like to send me a text message instead, right? Talk before you text. Right, shall we have our very first therapist in to check the mental health of the nation, in the form of Mr. Mark Littlewood, Director of Popular Conservatism. Mark, I didn't have much sleep last night, and when I heard, first of all on the radio, before I'd really scanned the front page of the newspapers, about serious criminals, people in an immigration removal centre. We're not even talking about these hotels where these people have broken into our country, which is bad enough. We're talking about the people who it's been decided they have no right to be in this country and they've got to be sent home, either because they've been taking the mick saying that they want to claim asylum, or because they've done something pretty bad, and therefore in other countries they're probably part of a chain gang being marched onto a Hercules and pushed out at the first sight of tarmac. But no, the people in this deportation centre in Heathrow apparently need to have lessons in how to braid hair, how to make sculptures out of balloons, how to do flower arranging. The advert on the website for these various roles, it's still there. I was reading it this morning. Mark, how does it even get to this? What I want to know, which mentally ill individuals have sat down as a collective around some boardroom table and said, do you know what we should do to these people that we're turfing out of the country? We should teach them some circus crafts. How do you get to that point, Mark? How?
Well, what we've got, Alex, I mean, here's the good news, right? Here's the good news. You aren't the last person in Britain who is sane. There are quite a good number of us, indeed the overwhelming majority of British people. The moron mind virus is only affecting those who actually run our government and local and national services. I mean, those are the last people that you'd want to be infected by this, whatever this moron virus is that seems to be infecting them, because it means our services go completely haywire. But we've basically got a bureaucracy and a political elite who are now completely out of touch with the basic common sense values of the British people. I mean, words fail me on this sort of nonsense. It's not just a policy that I disagree with. It's one that I can't imagine any remotely rational and sane person would come up with. I mean, it's the idea that we're feeling a bit guilty about sending you back to, say, Sudan, but we're going to make sure you're well equipped. And what you'll really need when you get back to Sudan is the ability to create a balloon dog and put some daffodils in a vase. Is that the thinking? I mean, it's absolutely extraordinary. So what should we do about this? Well, there needs to be a full-blown change of the politicians and the bureaucrats running our country. There needs to be a complete sweep out of an overwhelming majority of incumbents. But how about this as a rule as well? That nobody, especially those who are facing deportation, but even those who are in a holding pattern whilst we consider their claims, they should not be given anything that isn't freely available to all British citizens. So if you have some bizarre view that you want to offer them classes on balloon craft, fine, but that needs to be offered to every Brit as well. I think pretty soon people would realise that was an unsustainable position. But I'm with you, it's crazy, it's mad. The good news is most British people know that.
But these people have got to be ill. There's no other explanation in my mind than someone sitting there looking at someone who's committed potentially a violent offence, who's being sent back home going, we need to show them balloon craft, floristry, how to braid their hair. These people are ill. It's the only explanation. And do you know what? I'm so fed up now with these big companies like Mighty, who run this asylum centre, whatever, deportation centre, just hoovering up millions of our money, my money, when I sit here and I come to work in the driving rain and I do this show and I watch at the end of every month the tax that goes out of my account to pay for companies like this, to pay for the individuals who are then wasting our money, flagrantly trolling us, quite frankly, with these utterly deranged, degenerate policies. I am sorry, but it's about time that this newspaper headline, front page of the Sun, that Mighty has called in front of Parliament and said, you're gone, you're not fit to run this deportation centre, this is actually ripping the proverbial, that the person who sat there and made this decision is named, shamed and sacked and possibly paraded in the street with red vegetables being thrown at them. Because this cannot go on. We can't just go, oh well, some people have gone a bit wonky, oh we've become a bit nice, oh well it's human. No, I'm sorry, it's got to stop. This has got to stop. These massive multinational companies who are making millions out of the illegal immigration industrial complex at our expense, from my pocket, from your pocket, endangering our kids, and have the audacity to offer them a lesson in how to make a blimmin' giraffe out of a balloon. These people need to be sacked. They need to be shamed. This is perverse.
Yep, but should we be pointing our finger at the people who are providing these services or the government department that has signed off on them? If the Home Office are so insane that they want to go out to the free market and say, we're looking for someone who can provide accommodation, food, balloon craft, hair braiding sessions and the like, a private company will provide it. The Home Office shouldn't be, or local councils, neither should be seeking that kind of service. You can't really blame a private company stepping up to the plate if there is a government contract to be awarded along these lines. How on earth anyone in the Home Office or indeed any area of government sort of say, well, let's have a look through the budget. Yeah, that seems about the right amount in order to teach people how to make giraffe balloons or to arrange some roses in a vase. Someone in government has signed off this misuse of our money. And if governments decide and local councils decide to do very stupid things, private companies will step up to the plate to provide those very stupid things. That is a political problem, I think, more than a commercial problem. But you're quite right. It's got to end. It's got to come to a stop. It's embarrassing. What do we think this mind virus is? I've got a bit of a theory, and that's that our rulers not just the very top politicians, but sort of bureaucrats at local councils, have come to the conclusion that virtually everybody in Britain, indigenous citizens as well as new arrivals, are incredibly vulnerable, that there's virtually nobody resilient left on these islands, and therefore it is the job of the state and local councils to continually mollycoddle us and provide us with goods and services, because virtually none of us are capable of looking after ourselves. That, right, I think, is what's sort of feeding all of this. And therefore, not just with illegal immigrants, but for people on welfare, with, we've now apparently got the worst mental health crisis, ever, with people being depressed and unable to work. We have fallen for the myth, or at least our rulers have, that the British people are nearly all incredibly vulnerable. Whereas the truth is, we're nearly all incredibly resilient.
Look, if you sit down, for decade after decade, if you start saying to people, a man isn't a man, a person with a beard in a frock can go to little girls' changing rooms, that someone who's broken the law and sexually attacked a child should actually deserve our sympathy and be put up in a house. If you, for decades, start preaching to people what is clearly not remotely true, gaslighting and brainwashing, this is the result. And we are now in an emergency situation. We're in an emergency situation when the Home Office is saying that the rights of these people who have illegally invaded this country outstrip the rights of the citizens. This is actual destruction. This is national self-harm. I mean, what are they going to do next? Start carpet bombing our high streets? I've reached the point with the collection of headlines and the collective madness that seems to be gripping people who are in control of this country, that it is not just unsustainable. People standing outside migrant hotels saying, get out, go home, need to start saying to the government, get out, go home, because this just won't pass muster anymore. We've reached a stage now where I actually feel like I'm beginning to lose my own marbles at the state of this nation and the decisions being taken.
Yeah, well, I guess if you live in a mad country long enough, you start to adapt to it, don't you? And listen, I agree with everything you've said. I mean, the good news here is that we still live in a democracy. So at some point, the British people will have their opportunity to change these things. At the last election, in their wisdom, the British people chose a change of management. They were very clear that they wanted a change of management. I think it's now dawning on us all that a change of management won't do. There needs to be a complete change of structure. There needs to be a total overhaul of what British government and local councils do and what they don't. And the various international treaties we've signed, domestic law protections like the Human Rights Act, the power of the civil service, the increased power of the judiciary, none of this will do. All of that needs to be tackled. You can't just change the people in charge at the top, the Prime Minister and the Cabinet. You've got to change the entire system. And if you're believing what we're seeing in the opinion polls and in local election results and by-elections, that's what the British people are going to demand. And who can blame them? Because when civilisations and countries sort of basically die, it's often not in some horrific war. It's that they become self-indulgent and ludicrous and petty.
It's the Lemmings phenomenon.
And involve themselves with things which, are just not high priorities. And meanwhile they're going bust and crime soaring, and you've got a huge number of illegal immigrants coming in. You can't deal with it, and you get involved in an argument about whether Gary can go into the Girl Guides toilets or not. I mean, it's absolutely absurd, complete inability to prioritise, complete inability to control anything.
But also, right, another story which has really grabbed my attention today, and I don't think there's enough of a hoo-ha over this, if I'm honest with you, is Angela Rayner. So a few weeks ago, she's living in her constituency of Ashton-under-Lyne. Then she buys, somehow, I don't know where she's managed to get 800k from, but she's managed to fork out for a holiday home down in Hove. And, oh, what do you believe? 2 weeks ago, she decided that's now her main place of residence. And I'm like, either, Angela, you are an outright liar in order to evade tax, you should be sacked. Or you don't live in your constituency, so you don't represent your constituents, so you should face a by-election. It is trolling us again at the highest level. And I remember the hoo-ha, because a donor had given Boris Johnson the money to put some different wallpaper up in Downing Street. And I thought, I don't care. I don't care if he wants to redecorate Downing Street and if someone else is paying for it. I don't care. This, however, is the Deputy Prime Minister. If Sir Legohead goes AWOL for much longer, she'll be running the country. They're slamming taxes on us. They want to tax landlords' national insurance. And she, however, thinks it's okay in her position of prominence, where she should be subject to the most intense level of public scrutiny, who should act within the spirit of the law. And I don't care whether this is in the letter of the law. This is hoodwinking to such an audacious level to claim your holiday home is where you full-time live to avoid £40,000 worth of tax, when the country is on its knees and being whipped by this government for more and more money to abuse us. Why is she still in a job? Why isn't every single news channel right now calling for her to be kicked out? I don't get it. Make it make sense.
Well, I guess it's partly because what you said, Alex, that what she's done is technically, it is legal. It is legal. She has not broken the law. And in our ludicrously complex tax code in the United Kingdom, I think I'm right in saying we now have the longest tax code in the world. It's about 14 or 15 times the length of War and Peace. The last time I looked at it, no single human being could read it through and understand it all. So she technically hasn't broken the law.
But the morality is black and white. You know, she's supposed to be the MP for Ashton-under-Lyne. That is where she lives. I bet you when she was canvassing for their support, she said, I'm from around here, I'm like you, I'm going to represent your interests. People in Ashton-under-Lyne say they haven't seen hide nor hair of her because she's sitting there guzzling a vat of wine on the beach while vaping in a dinghy, living the life of Riley, evading tax. I don't care if this is the letter of the law. Morally, this is black and white. Politically, this is black and white. She needs to go. She's got to go.
I think the key thing here as well, it's not just about her as the housing minister, ironically enough. I mean, it does seem to be that Labour ministers actually get into trouble, ironically enough, on their particular portfolios. You know, the corruption minister gets into trouble about corruption. The housing minister now gets into trouble about housing. But the government is pretty emphatic on its view of tax avoidance. They don't like people avoiding tax. They're hardly going round telling the British voters, you know, make sure you get advice so you can lower your tax bill and hand over less at the end of the year. There are all sorts of cunning ways in which you might do that, because redesignating your primary property, if you're lucky enough to own more than one property, is often a cunning way to do that. And I've got no doubt that Angela Rayner has reorganised her affairs almost entirely to reduce her tax burden, something which is frowned upon by this government if any of the rest of us try and do it, even within the law. So it does smack of hypocrisy in that area as well. But what we've got to be careful about a little bit, Alex, is what do we want the law to be? I mean, do we want people who own more than one property to be able to designate any property of their choice as their primary property? Or do we want a squad of tax inspectors going round, you know, sat outside your house, making sure that you're staying there at least 4 nights a week, individuals having to prove that they spent more days in their primary residence than their secondary residence? I think we've got to be a little bit careful what we wish for.
But I do, look, regardless of the law, and I don't care, like I said, I don't care whether technically this is within the bounds of what is legal, politically and morally, it is so evidently wrong that we, the British people, should be able to demand that that person hangs their head in shame. They're not suitable for public office. They do not represent their constituents, and they need to be held to account. That is where I stand on all this. I cannot believe there's not more of a hoo-ha made about this when people were so exercised about Boris Johnson's wallpaper. It smacks of absolute hypocrisy, and I'm just sick to death of this girl. I'm so angry, Mark, as you can tell. I am so angry. Oh, just not with you though. You've been a delight. Thank you ever so much. Thank you so much for coming here and listening to me rant and rave. I'm going to take a little breather now. I suggest you do the same, and then rejoin me after the advert break to share in some of our anguish and our pain and our despair, because I mean, look, I don't know what is going on with this country, but we are now on the brink of collapse. We're lemmings walking towards the edge of the cliff. And one by one, the lemmings are tumbling over the precipice. And it's just not sustainable, is it? Let me know your thoughts. 03444991000. I could do with the moral support this morning. Your normal network rate, which means you don't really have to pay anything to come and give Alex a helping hand at surviving the day and imbibing all of the horrors of the news. You can also leave me a voice note on WhatsApp or send me a WhatsApp using that number. 87222 is the number if you'd like to send me a text message. Please write the word talk before you type out your text. I'm going to be back just after this.
Expensive contract with the government to look after these people until you can do something else with them, and especially if they are known criminals and they need to be deported from the country as soon as possible. And I would sit in my office and think, how the hell has this happened, and how the hell does it happen on your watch?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, welcome back. Is anyone there to help me out? Oh, there it is. Look, it's flashing up in my little Cape Canaveral here. Let's speak first of all to Mike, who's in Warwickshire. Good morning to you, Mike.
Good morning. Nice to hear you having a nice, relaxed morning. Nice rant.
It's crazy. What's going on? What's happening, Mike?
The question I'm going to ask of Angela Rayner is, so she's moved residence down to Hove.
Yeah.
Okay. Where is your husband living, and where are your kids going to school?
Right. Also, where are your constituents that you're supposed to represent? You don't want to go see them anymore?
100%. 100%. The fact is that as far as she's concerned, she can do what she likes, and she will claim the letter of the law, as they always do.
Yeah.
Now, this government have done this time and time again. When they were talking about the balloon sculptures, etc., what did the Home Office say? Oh, we'd asked them to take those jobs down. Everything is after the event. Once they're like a naughty child. Every time you catch them, they give you a very damp, wet, horrible answer. So, it couldn't have been me. It wasn't me. It was them. And
this woman, let's remind ourselves, right? Angela Rayner is the woman who turned round and called the Conservative Party scum. She makes out like she's some sort of working class hero, that all these people, all the rich landowners, all this for all the money. And she is basically audaciously trolling us by buying a near £1 million third home, a holiday home, and then claiming that she lives there full time in order to not pay £40,000 worth of tax when she's the Minister for Housing. This is beyond disgusting. This is beyond... This is just so disgraceful. I cannot believe that they're not screaming in news studios around the country like they did about that so-called gold wallpaper.
Right, but how much does she get paid? How can she afford this?
Right.
Where's the money coming from?
Yeah, exactly.
And when they were saying that they're there for the people, I've signed a petition for another election, and I think everybody should do that. They should get on that site and they should sign that petition. And I know we won't get another election, but it proves a point.
Oh, I'll tell you what, Sunshine, when we have to go cap in hand to the IMF, and that day is fast coming, I am certain that day is swift approaching, this government's going to fall. This government will fall. It is beyond a parody now. They're not just hopeless. They're not just hopeless. They are arrogant. They lie. They deceive. They hate us. They call us names. We are in an abusive relationship with this government.
I agree. This is the first government in my lifetime where I would actually say they hate the British people.
Yeah.
They hate everything. They hate our history. They hate who we are. They hate our culture. There's nothing that I can think of that they do not hate. And then, to cap it all off, they tell us about all of these people who are the wealth makers and all the rest of it, who create the jobs and all the rest of it. They go on about those people whilst behind the scenes getting as much money out of the position they've got as they can, by doing extra work here and extra work there, and I don't think they do work. I just think they're just paid to be a member of whatever board or do whatever. Yeah. And they do this, and then they talk about somebody who has, I don't know, got a window cleaning round and cleaned their own windows one day using the same product. And, oh, aren't they terrible? They should have paid 10 pence in tax. They're an absolute disgrace.
If this government were a husband, they would be charged with domestic abuse because they gaslight, because they financially control us, because they emotionally control us, they intimidate us, they control what we say. They are abusive. It's that simple.
But they couldn't be a husband because they don't know what one looks like.
There you go. Always good to end on a funny note there, Mike. Thank you ever so much for giving me a little bit of support and comfort this morning. Let's speak to David, who is in God's own county of Gloucestershire. Good morning to you, David.
Good morning, Alex. How are we all?
Well, that's a good question, isn't it? It's a loaded question. I think it's unwise to ask this of the British public at the moment.
I know. Every morning I wake up to, Mike Graham or Jeremy Kyle, you feel more and more depressed. But my point I was going to make is, you said about, are you collectively mad or whatever? Well, I think they are collectively mad, but my mum always used to say, I think all these people are on drugs.
Yeah.
And that was, she said that for the last 30, 40 years. And I think that these people who are in power now should have to take a drugs test. I honestly do think that if you go into Parliament, they should have to take a drinks and drugs test. If you work for local government, and let's see how many of them would fail.
That's a really interesting... Oh, that is an interesting prospect, David. Did you know, actually, at one point there was some sort of investigation done into drugs taking within Parliament, and it was reported that almost every single toilet seat in the House of Commons showed traces of there being some sort of illicit activity. And I agree with you. These people are just... They're not... Well, they're not passing muster, are they, to put it mildly? And I think you're right. There's got to be something in the... I just don't understand it. It's got to be something in the water. There's something very funny going on with the establishment.
Well, they all employ their same type. If they always, when somebody goes for a job, I bet anybody that was a bit right-wing or a bit straight talking, oh, no, we're not having them working here. Let's get somebody that's a bit lefty, a bit, our type. And that's what's happened.
They behave like medieval kings. They behave like bad King John. These people running the country. David, thank you ever so much calling me from glorious Gloucestershire, my sanctuary, my refuge, where I'm going to go back to this afternoon, where hopefully we'll be able to bind my brain back together in some sort of semblance of rationality so I can continue doing what I do. OK, we're going to take a short break now, but don't go anywhere, because on the other side of the break, we're going to go back to this brilliant front page in The Sun with Thomas Godfrey, excellent news reporter at The Sun, which is about these people facing deportation or being taught balloon craft. Make that make sense. That's after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
If you'd been a fly on the wall during that advert break and seen the conversation that just happened between the wonderful Thomas Godfrey, news reporter at The Sun, responsible for this absolutely staggering front page, and what you have heard is me basically just make a series of funny clicks and sounds like I was from the Xhosa tribe of South Africa. I was just going... because words fail me, Thomas, with this story. I mean, look, they're failing me again. What?
I mean, it's worth laying it out. It's the taxpayer funds from a Home Office contract are being used to hire people who can teach balloon craft in immigration removal centres.
Removal centres?
Yeah, the key word is removal centres. A lot of these people are either awaiting deportation or having their immigration status resolved. They are, in effect, many of them, on the way out of the country. Their asylum claim has been rejected, or they're a foreign national offender who's waiting to be flown home.
You just gave me a statistic then, before we came back, about the proportion of these people who are actually coming from prison.
Well, it's two-thirds at Harmondsworth, which is one of the two sites at Heathrow. Two-thirds of arrivals at Harmondsworth, a report last year found, had come directly from prison. So they were foreign offenders who were deported at the end of their term. They arrived from prison into Harmondsworth and seemingly are going to be given lessons on floristry, painting, decorating, hairdressing, and have someone running around doing gym classes for them, all for 40 grand a year, which is decent salary, actually. Maybe not for London, but a decent salary. It's worth noting the Home Office have asked these jobs be taken down. They say they were not necessary in the first place, but that is the question. Why were these jobs actually allowed to be offered? Why were they fielding applicants?
In what psychotic, sociopathic, deranged, destabilised country are we deporting dangerous foreign criminals, and then somebody somewhere is sitting in some meeting going, let's teach them how to make balloon animals?
Yeah, I mean, it beggars belief, really. The combined paycheck for every year, but taxpayers are on the hook for, the combined paycheck for these 4 roles plus a vocational skills tutor, also on 31 grand a year, is over £165,000. Now, I think both of us could do better with £165,000 of taxpayer money than employing absolutely nonsense roles like this.
For me, the most concerning aspect, whether this costs 1 pence or £1 million, is the psychology behind it. It is the fact that there's a human being out there, or a collection of human beings out there, who think that this is what ought to be done. It is the principle, it's the rationale, it's the fact that these human beings have got into these positions of power, they have significant amounts of responsibility, and quite frankly, I wouldn't trust them to be mentally stable enough to be a dog walker.
You'd love to be a fly on the wall in the meetings where they go down this big list of recreation ideas, of ideas to give these people something to do while they wait in immigration detention. And by the way, the average wait time in immigration detention is a month. So these people are not there for, let's say, years at a time. It's meant to be a short-term holding centre. Now, actually, what happens at these centres is because the deportation flights don't get sorted in time, a lot of people in immigration removal centres end up being released back into the community.
I would love to go and see a deportation centre in Dubai. I'd love to go and see a deportation centre in Indonesia. I'd love to go and see a deportation centre in almost any other country in the world and see the sort of conditions that those people are in compared to this absolute madness.
Some of the job readings genuinely appear like they're asking for secondary school teachers, not for people to deal with, in many cases, dangerous foreign criminals. I mean, for example, one I can read out, a creatively minded painting tutor will lead, quote, paint parties at the centre. They are asked to create, quote, a stimulating, supportive and productive environment for residents that encourages residents, not detainees. Residents that encourages them to attend and enables them to learn and develop their skills.
Their skills at what? Becoming the next Bob Hope? Thomas, you do such sterling work, but you're going to be the death of me, sunshine. You make another front page like this and my brains are going to be splattered all over the 4 walls of this studio. On the subject of asylum seekers, it turns out that the Home Office thinks that their rights outweigh ours. Of course they do. And this has caused, as you could imagine, a fair amount of consternation down in Epping Forest. Some would say the nexus of the fight back against asylum hotels. Last night there were clashes between police and protesters. It got very hot under the collar indeed. Let's speak now to Sarah White, who's an Epping mum and a campaigner. Welcome on board HMS Let's Try and Stay Sane Together, Sarah.
Morning, Alex.
Were you there last night?
Yes, I was.
What unfolded? Tell us from the horse's mouth.
Right, so thankfully it didn't turn aggressive or violent, but it is at the tipping point now. And, you know, so what happened was all of the women met first of all, and then all the men come along and marched up the high street and come towards where the Bell Hotel is. And then the police kind of got at loggerheads with all the men. And it got very heated because tensions are running high in Epping and we just feel incredibly let down.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And of course, the government are quaking in their boots because they think if you get your way, then this is going to set a precedent or a blueprint for other people to try and get their own way up and down the country. And they don't have any solutions of where to put these men, other than, it seems to me, they want to stick them in private accommodation. Private rental accommodation. Now, we were talking earlier about a particular company who are running a deportation centre. Somebody has sent to me via email a call out from another company in charge of sourcing HMOs, houses of multiple occupancy in the private sector. And it lists a traffic light system of which parts of the country they're actively seeking to find houses to put these people in. And I'm sure you'll be less than delighted to know, Sarah, that a green traffic light highlight, oh yes, we want private rental accommodation here to put these young men, is in Epping Forest. How would you feel once the Bell Hotel is closed down, if they do succeed, that actually what happens is some of those residents end up living next door to you or over the road?
Well, I'd be completely outraged, and that is the concern in Epping. We have understood since we've been protesting that obviously once we achieve what we want to achieve, or hopefully, the Bell Hotel will be closed, and our concern is that all of these men will be dispersed within our community, and like you said, could be next door to me, could be next door to anyone, and that is totally unacceptable. It was quite easy during COVID for the government to build the Nightingale Clinic. Why isn't it not acceptable for places to be built that are out of anyone's communities, a detention centre? Because let's remember, these men have broken into our country illegally. Yep. I can't break into somebody's home and just be allowed to still roam the streets. Right. It is unacceptable, and our government is letting us down.
You make such a good point, because after the Second World War, where we had bona fide refugees from other countries in Europe who largely share our religion and our culture and our mores, they were made to stay for months, if not years, in makeshift refugee camps before they were able to settle in. And they were here more than legally. We invited them over, and rightly so. And actually, if you look at parts of the world where the majority of refugees are put up in camps, places like Syria, I'll tell you something for free, Sarah, their winters are a lot harsher than ours. Their summers are a lot hotter than ours. The standards of sanitation in those refugee camps are probably going to be a lot worse than anything we would offer. And I don't understand why, quite rightly as you say, when it was good enough for the British people who might be nearing the end of their mortal coil from an unknown virus to be put in camp beds in these massive built-for-purpose units called Nightingale hospitals, which sprung up seemingly in a matter of moments, why these men illegally breaking into the country on dinghies who've been living in bin-bag bivouacs in the sand dunes of Calais are worthy instead of boutique hotels.
Yeah, it's absolutely disgusting. And, you know, I wonder how Keir Starmer or Yvette Cooper would feel if they had these so-called illegal migrants, undocumented men living next door to them. How safe would they feel for their wives and their children? I
would. I've just bought my first house. It turns out there's a flat next door to my house which is for sale. Now, I think where I've moved to in God's own county of Gloucestershire, my specific part of the sticks is probably inoculated from having a wild-eyed so-called refugee turn up and live next door. But if they did, that would ruin... My house would be unsellable. I would feel unsafe. I wouldn't want to live there. The price of my property that I've only just managed to scrape together to buy at the age of 41 would plummet. The whole community would feel unsafe. The sanctuary that I feel when I leave London and go there would be totally destroyed. And my heart, I mean, I don't think it's going to happen to me, but my heart desperately goes out to anybody who wakes up one morning and suddenly finds a load of unknown men who have had, and this is the thing, right? This is the thing. All these people going, oh, the poor things, they need to learn to make balloon animals. They're racists because they see people from other countries and go, they're victims, they're weak, they're incapable. I'm sorry, these men are physically fit enough to cross continents. They're savvy enough to do deals with international human traffickers and somehow get hold of thousands of pounds. They're hardy enough to be able to live in makeshift encampments in Calais. In what world are these people poor and vulnerable and so desperately in need of our help? They're just not. It doesn't add up, does it?
No, it doesn't add up. And I think what the government need to remember is they are here to serve the liberty of the people within Great Britain who have been born and bred here, who have got good morals and good work ethic. And the government need to be very careful what they wish for, because the people of Epping have had enough, and dependent on today's verdict will depend on how we react.
Oh, Sarah, the people of Epping have had enough, and the people of Epping are all of us. Hashtag I am Epping. Thank you ever so much for coming on. Thomas, I'm going to throw this back to you. Where's Sir Keir Starmer? While Rome is burning, he's not very good at speaking to us unless there was far-right thugs coming out of his mouth.
That's a very good point, and the Home Office is doing currently a great deal of its public relations through lawyers at the Court of Appeal over the last couple of days. It's a very good question, and I think the point has just been made about dispersal accommodation. The asylum hotel bill by itself is £3.1 billion a year. Even if dispersed accommodation knocks a third off that, I mean, you're still looking at more than £2 billion a year. A lot of people look at that and still say, well, that's still £2 billion too much. It's still a colossal waste of money, a misallocation of taxpayer funds at a much grander scale than 30 grand on a balloon shooter is.
My concern is not just economic when it comes to this. If we're worried about the nature of these men, the sort of morals that they may have in their home countries and what sort of attitudes towards women they're bringing over here, if we are so concerned about the threat posed to girls based upon where this all kicked off in Epping, a migrant man approaching 14-year-old girls and touching them up and saying, I want to make babies with you. What on earth is going to go on when these people are in private accommodation where they can say, come back to my house? There's no eyes on. I hate these hotels, but it'd be hard for them to take a schoolgirl across the threshold and take her into their bedroom.
Yeah, and I mean, already there's multiple modes of accommodation that have been tried. RAF Wethersfield, for example, converted into asylum accommodation, and that caused a lot of outrage from military families that were being kicked off that base, removed from their very dilapidated homes, because the upkeep of military homes in this country is another talking point entirely, especially on bases where they just fall into disrepair. However, when they were removed, that base was refurbished for asylum seekers to move into. You're right. I mean, we did an investigation earlier this year that found that more than 300 migrants had been charged at hotels across the country with criminal offences and had appeared in court to that end.
They're in hotels where there are people on the reception desk, where there are people who they clearly don't monitor whether they're working for the Deliveroo or not.
No, they don't.
At least there's eyes on. What on earth? What's it going to look like when they're in private houses?
There are security teams at these hotels.
Yeah.
There is a threshold. There is a physical barrier to committing crimes within the perimeter of the hotel. The point you made about house prices. Cast your mind back to the demonstrations at the Thistle Barbican in central London, in Islington. It was the hotel where we revealed how there were dozens of e-bikes outside with Deliveroo bags, people cycling off, collecting orders, delivering them, going home at night. I went and spoke to some of the residents who live around that hotel a while ago, and they all told me the same thing, which was that they could not sell their flats. The value of their flats had gone down. There was one man I spoke to who had just had a newborn child who he was been trying to sell the flat for over a year and just simply wasn't able to, on the basis that prospective buyers would come and have a look. They'd see there was a migrant hotel next door and immediately demand money off. He's actually taken the flat off the market because he just feels it's too much hassle to want to move out. The same in Bournemouth, my hometown as a matter of fact, the same in Bournemouth, where there are 3 migrant hotels, including one with rooms overlooking the sea. Very posh block of apartments opposite that, the sort of place anyone would want to live, overlooking the sea on the south coast. Again, they feel their house prices have been decimated by the presence of an asylum hotel. And if suddenly the 200 hotels or so becomes, let's say, 600, 700 houses, it will be more than that, of course, but just a number, then suddenly that same problem is going to apply, in theory, to potentially thousands of homes.
Plus Bournemouth Beach is becoming a public latrine. Thomas, thank you ever so much. Your work is absolutely sterling, but like I said, you're probably going to lead to my final demise with your excellence finding out of these absolutely breathtaking stories. Thomas Godfrey, ladies and gentlemen, news reporter at The Sun, responsible for this utterly astonishing front page. Brilliant journalism. Journalism at its best. OK, we're going to be taking a short break. I'm pleased to say that I'm going to be joined by a mental health nurse after the break, but not so much to counsel me, which is something I feel I'm extremely in need of, but to cover the story of one of the worst trusts, mental health trusts in the NHS, the worst performing. Guess what they're trying to do to make things better? Oh, that's right, they're coughing up for more diversity officers. That's after this.
they fell apart when they tried to adjust the personal independence payment, and their Labour MPs wouldn't vote for any spending cuts, which didn't surprise me at all. That's partly why we're headed for crisis, because if Labour MPs won't vote to control spending, quite the reverse, they'll rebel in large numbers, then even if Rachel Reeves wanted to do the right thing, she wouldn't be able to. So it's a very serious situation, I'm afraid, and thank goodness for your listeners, because until the public are demanding lower taxes, we're really, and that means lower spending, of course, we're really headed towards disaster.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back. I think I need a long lie down. I think I might actually need some sort of sedative. I'm not well. I just can't. I don't know if I can go on anymore living in this country. And the mad, it's actually making me hit the point of despair. And I'm not even exaggerating. This isn't even me being hyperbolic. I realised when I got home the other day after work that I'm like, this job is making me go doolally. I'm going to end up like Britney Spears, putting videos on Instagram, like writhing around in my kitchen in some sort of snake print bikini, wild-eyed and half lunatic if I carry on much longer. But that's okay, because I've got a good friend of mine joining me now who's a mental health nurse. It's Amy Gallagher, fantastic ex-NHS nurse at the Tavistock Clinic and commentator at the New Culture Forum. Oh, Amy, I mean, first of all, I just want to quickly say, how mental is this country become?
Yeah, I think this whole country needs to be put on a therapist's couch and given long-term treatment. It's gone crazy.
It really has gone crazy. And, a symptom of the craziness, or whether it's a cause, I don't know, or both. Yet again, here we have an NHS trust, a mental health trust that was once named the worst performing in the country. It was placed in special measures for 7 years. And now advertising for, guess what? A diversity officer. To lead the Trust's equality and inclusion strategies, to drive cultural change. What cultural change? And what does it even mean? To improve minority staff experience. This is just, this is exactly this sort of stuff that is making people go nuts. So the idea that, it's feeding people the information that if you happen to be from a different country, or have a different religion or a different language or a different sexuality, that somehow your life's victim and you should be in despair. So we're going to have to employ someone to tell everyone they've got to tread carefully around you and do some online course because they're a monster inside. This is the stuff that makes people go tonto.
Indeed. I mean, look, the NHS is spending 40 million a year on diversity, equity and inclusion roles. 2 million of that goes on staff events like International Pronouns Day and so on. We have chronic staff shortages in the NHS. We have 7 million people on waiting lists for routine appointments, and yet it's spending money on this kind of stuff, which, as you say, I mean, there's no evidence, by the way, that any of this stuff improves patient outcomes or improves staff relationships. There is evidence increasingly that it is increasing division within the NHS. We've seen loads of lawsuits in terms of gender critical women defending their right to, have single sex spaces. It's causing, people be made to go along with anti-racist training days where they feel that actually it's racist and it makes them feel like they need to leave. So all of this stuff is making things worse, as you say, and it's making the NHS a really unpleasant place to work in. So why would we spend money on it? We know, for example, in terms of the trans and non-binary policies that were put in place, they were actually encouraging NHS trusts to break the law because they were saying that trans rights trump women's rights, which it doesn't. And even after the Supreme Court ruling, there are still trusts pushing these kind of policies which were written up under DEI. and they are encouraging illegal practices. They're encouraging trusts to deny women their sex-based rights. So it's not even making things worse, it's actually encouraging illegality. And I honestly don't know why any government would allow this kind of money to be spent on this stuff when there's overwhelming evidence is making everything worse.
Have you ever had to do one of these sort of inclusion training sessions?
Sorry?
Have you ever had to do one, like something like this, when you were at the NHS? Yeah, what do they do? I've never been on one. I don't know how I've managed to evade it in my adult life, I suppose, because I work for a sane corporation, thank goodness. But what do they do? What do they say?
It's just ideology and dogma all the way down. And what's interesting is when you just ask questions about what they're teaching you, if they're teaching you about critical race theory or pronouns or gender identity, and you're not even hostile, you just sort of say, well, what does that mean? Can you just explain that? Because it's a bit confusing. I don't really understand, this concept of gender identity. They don't actually have an answer because they themselves haven't thought about it. They're just told to parrot these mantras, and you're just supposed to go along with it. I mean, I've had it that in my yearly appraisal, I've been asked, how have you been an anti-racist, and how are you an anti-racist on a daily basis?
Oh my goodness!
And I've just said, well, I'm not a racist.
Right. Oh, yeah. Amy, you're an amazing woman. Thank you ever so much for joining me on the programme. Let's go for a big old vat of wine soon, because Lord knows I'm going to need my head examined if I have to live in this country for much longer. Right, going to take a short break now, and it's going to be, back at it, because we've got 2 more hours of trying to make sense of it all. So don't go anywhere. Let's do it together.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back. Thank you for your lovely messages. I feel like I'm in some sort of metaphorical media hospital right now, receiving well wishes, bunches of grapes and flowers from the good people of Great Britain, because there are so many people messaging me saying, we feel your pain. John in Wallington, thank you ever so much. Phyllis in Rossum-Y says, also, I am feeling your pain. At least, Phyllis, as you live in Rossum-Y, you have the best medicine known to man where you come from, because there's a brilliant little cider place, the Yew Tree. That is the pub of Ross Cider Company. Up at hairs on your chest. That will knock some sense into people. Maybe that's what we should be prescribing to people in the Home Office right now, the good cider of Ross-on-Wye. But thank you ever so much for your moral support. Ian says, in an insane world, a sane person will appear insane. Do you know, this is a brilliant message. I love this one because this has just cheered me up a bit, because we all need to laugh, or I actually will end up like a sort of strange caged zoo animal strolling around and whacking my bonts against the wall. I think you're being a bit harsh about the skills training being offered to those about to be deported from Harmondsworth. The skills of flower arranging and balloon sculpting could come in handy in Taliban-controlled Afghanistan. Yeah, poor wee things. Better learn how to make that giraffe. Good morning, Alex. Fantastic to hear you this morning. I agree with you. What is going on with these migrants waiting to leave the UK? It's affected me so badly. I'm rocking backwards and forwards in my van, headbutting the steering wheel in despair. I mean, seriously, I actually feel like I'm about to reach that stage this morning. So my other half, he's a canny fella, this one. He's so good at being a news hound, looking at these, always pinging me news stories. You see, you wouldn't believe this, you wouldn't get, look at this tweet, this is going, blah, 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 blah. And I was there putting my slap on, listening to the radio, which is when it was sort of via the radio that I first heard about the Sun's front page balloonacy, about the fact that people in a deportation centre are getting lessons into how to make balloon animals, hair braiding, paint activity classes, flower arranging, gym memberships. 2/3 of them have come straight from prison. We're sending them home because they're monsters. And when I said to him, oh, you would not, but he said, fact check that. You better fact check that before you go on. I said, no, mate, it's front page of the Sun. No, they've even talked about it on the BBC. And he's like, that can't be it. I was like, seriously? Look it up. Look it up. And it's got to the stage now that the sort of headlines that are being unearthed on a daily basis are so absurd. They are so beyond the pale when it comes how to run a country, or even just rational thinking, that I don't even know whether I'm dreaming this. I don't know whether I'm sort of stuck in some sort of delirium tremens ever since my university years, that I had one too many WKD-40s, whatever they're called, and ever since then I've been in some sort of drink stupor. Because it doesn't make sense to me anymore how there are people who somehow have managed to reach the adult world and hold positions of responsibility, who would sit in a meeting room and say, yeah, do you know what we need for these violent foreign criminals that we're deporting? Someone to teach them how to make balloon sculptures. How did this happen? Let's speak to Paul Embry, a writer and a trade unionist, once a sort of firebrand of the left. Paul, what is going on? How have we reached the stage that this has even happened? That there's somebody with the mental makeup, that there's not even a moment of reflection at how insane this is?
Well, good morning, Alex. It's a bizarre story, isn't it? I mean, look, I'm in favour of treating migrants humanely. I don't think we should see migrants starving on the streets. I think we should, give them shelter and treat them as human beings. I even think there's a case for giving them, while they're in an immigration removal centre, maybe even educational resources, read books, expand their knowledge and so on. And I say, by the way, I think sometimes the stories about what migrants receive in terms of benefits are quite often exaggerated. But I mean, what's going on here is clearly total nonsense. I mean, balloon craft and flower arranging and cake decorating and things like that. I mean, aside from anything else, the optics are terrible because it just simply winds people up. We've got a nation in which millions of people are already resentful and angry at a broken immigration and asylum system. We've got millions who think, I think with some justification, that we're a soft touch when it comes to our borders. And all this does is it deepens the tension. And you're right, I simply do not understand how somebody could sit in a room and come to a decision that these things are good ideas. I mean, it may be, I have to say, something to do with the fact that we're talking about these ideas coming from a private contractor rather than somebody within government directly. I think even people within government would see that this type of thing will not play well with the public. And I do think that raises a wider question, actually, about whether it's actually right and acceptable for a private contractor to be running, which is basically a state immigration removal centre.
Right.
I'm not in favour of that.
On this, I think their contract should be removed. I think they should be told, sorry, you're taking the mick out of us by making us pay for this stuff. You're not fit for purpose. You can't run a detention centre, a removal centre. 2/3 of these people, Paul, have come straight from prison. And we all know, don't we, these days, the threshold of actually being put in clink, unless you're Lucy Connolly, is you have to have done something pretty dreadful to even end up in court and end up with a custodial sentence. So 2/3 of these people in this removal centre aren't exactly nice, cuddly creatures. The fact that there's someone sitting there going, they need to learn how to flower arrange, braid hair, have paint therapy or whatever. It kind of, if we've got to the stage now, it reminds me of the story of that woman who had a pet chimp which turned around and ripped off her face. What do we think? What do we think is who? I just don't get it. Why do we have this sort of strange suicidal empathy for people who, quite frankly, to me, if you've come from prison and you're being deported, you're probably not a good person?
I think because, frankly, I think a lot of people within the upper echelons of our society, whether it's within politics and government, whether it's within our corporations, whether it's within business, entertainment, advertising, whatever, are members of what we now know as the Be Kind Brigade, because they think that it kind of wins them some kind of social kudos. It wins them brownie points amongst their peers. And if they were to ever take a hard line and to reflect the views that millions of ordinary people feel, I think that they would think that that would make them look a bit uncouth in front of their peers and wouldn't win them the plaudits that they often seek. But what that does is just creates a chasm between the people who run our political institutions and our corporations and people, ordinary people on the streets. And somebody somewhere made this decision. And quite rightly, it's come back to bite them, because I think you're right. There are many, many bad people in these places. And whilst, as I said at the top of the chat, we should treat people humanely. We shouldn't treat them as animals. We should treat human beings, even prisoners and detainees, humanely. Going to these extremes, I think, is clearly unsustainable. And people, and someone needs to be held accountable for it, frankly.
But there's nothing, in my mind, inhumane about setting up an actual sort of canvas-based refugee camp. That has been the international standard, and frankly still is, for decades and decades and decades now, in far worse climates than we've got. We've got pretty clement weather in the UK. We don't often have very sub-zero winters. We don't have scorching hot summers, however much that, the climate obsessives like to tell us we do. And if you look at refugee camps in places like Syria, people are in tents. That's the way it's always been done. I mean, if the British Army were able to all live in tents in Camp Basra, when we had the Iraq War, why on earth are these people coming over in dinghies who probably come from, frankly, throughout their whole lives, accommodation which resembles something rather makeshift and sort of scrambled together? I've lived in the developing world. I've seen how a great number of these people live and what they are, frankly, perfectly used to. A lot of these people probably don't have electricity necessarily in their homes, and DVD players and PlayStations, or even know what the word yoga means, let alone balloon crafting lessons. These are hardy men. They can perfectly, easily, comfortably survive in what is the traditional format and prototype for a refugee camp. They don't need to be in a blimmin' hotel. They can literally be in a very well put together army tent in a military security zone where they have running water and a flushing toilet, where they have medicine at their disposal should they need it. That is perfectly okay, in my opinion.
Well, I often think of I think they were called the Nightingale hospitals, which were set up in record quick time during the COVID pandemic. And they look to me to be quite civilized and quite a reasonable level of accommodation. I think the danger is, though, Ali, I don't want to see people in tents, to be honest. I think if we've got the capacity...
But why not? Why? Because, if you're a genuine asylum seeker, and a tent is going to be a delight to you. It was a delight to many people escaping Nazis in Europe.
I think if you simply don't have any capacity at all to be able to look after people under a proper roof, then of course you may end up in a situation where people are living in tents. I don't necessarily think that should be the first resort. I think that as a humane and civilized country, if we've got the capacity to house people in reasonable accommodation, we should do that. But let me just be very, very clear.
But the thing is, though, it's an upgrade for these people. This is why it's a draw factor. It's not just sort of civilized and nice. Where in the countries where these people are coming from, the sort of thing we might offer, I'm not saying we put them in bin-bag bivouacs like they have in the sand dunes of Calais. What I'm saying is a very well organised and well-resourced and secure site. But frankly speaking, even that would be an upgrade on what they've come from. They don't need to be in hotels or rented accommodation. That's madness.
I'm not suggesting they should be in some of the certainly some of the quite palatial hotels, you might say, in some cases. I think that does make people angry, but I would say this: I think in some respects, the question of the accommodation is a bit of a diversion, because for as long as we're arguing over the details, the minutiae of whether they should be in hotels or makeshift accommodation or in a tent, we're not dealing with the main issue, which is the broken immigration and asylum system. If we had that right, if the immigration and asylum system was working as it ought to be and people were being processed quickly, I'm in favour of an offshore system. I think that is the quickest and easiest and most effective way of dealing with it. If that was in and you were dealing with it effectively and you were removing people quickly where they were found not to have a valid case, then if they were staying in a hotel for a few nights or so, or a few weeks even, I don't think most people would have an issue with that particularly. It's become an issue. The whole issue of accommodation has become an issue because the immigration and asylum system itself is broken. And because it is taking so long for people's claims to be processed, and then they appeal, and then they remain in the country for 2, 3, 4 years or whatever while the appeal is being heard. That needs to be the focus. In some respects, the accommodation is a diversion. We need to get back to asking why the system is broken and how we most quickly.
I was just wondering something then. I was reading the papers this morning, and it said that after the hottest summer on record, we're now going to potentially have flooding because a whole load of precipitation is going to be dumped down on the southeast of England. Good luck to the gutters. And I thought to myself, right, say if where I'm from in Gloucester, it's almost like a sort of a sport in Gloucester to flood every 5 seconds. We're very used to it. If it so happens that, once again, Tewkesbury disappears under the sort of converged forces of the River Severn and the River Avon, and these people all have to evacuate their homes, are they going to be put in sleeping bags on leisure centre floors, or are they going to be given boutique hotels? Because I bet you what, if parts of Britain flood and Brits have to leave their houses, I bet they're not given hotel accommodation, which buys in very much to the position currently of the Home Office, which is what they're saying to the Court of Appeal, which is essentially the need to meet the human rights of asylum seekers by housing them in hotels outweighs safety concerns of local families. Because we're not treated like this by our own government. We got loads of homeless people, our own people, with long-term drug issues, former veterans, people who've come from incredibly unstable backgrounds, who the state has let down catastrophically, who are sleeping in shop doorways during COVID when they were considered some sort of risk to public health by sleeping on the streets. They were put in hotels. Oh, no, they're not good enough for the hotels now. But if you're some terrorist who happens to have paid an illegal trafficker thousands of pounds to break into the country, don't you worry, you get a four-poster bed, sunshine.
Well, I don't think the vast majority of people would disagree with you actually on the substantive point, which is that for most ordinary citizens of this country, if they found themselves in those types of difficulties that you described, particularly some of our forces veterans and so on, we see people living on the streets and we don't see people being put in hotels. So there is a clear discrepancy in the treatment. I read a story the other day from somebody who I think he said lost his passport at the airport or something like that, and had to go through the most rigorous and robust process to kind of demonstrate who he was, and was almost kind of treated like a criminal, whereas someone can rock up on our shores, mainly undocumented young men, as we know, and quite often don't have to go through the same kind of rigorous processes, and often stay in the system for several months or several years, and sometimes stay here for good, even though their claims may not be, I think, to the naked eye, to ordinary people, particularly valid. You touched on the Epping thing, and I think that's another thing in terms of the government's appeal that will just simply wind people up. Now, whatever the merits of the legal arguments, and none of us, apart from those involved, are sitting in the court and listening to all the evidence and looking at the legal factual background to it. But it's bad politics, and I just wonder if this is an example of a Prime Minister who has throughout his life been immersed in the legal world and sees most things through the prism of legalities and the legal merits, has just kind of looked at this and thought, oh, we've got a case here, we should fight it in the courts, without thinking what the optics are, without thinking what the politics are. And I think the messaging that's coming out in terms of actually the government is saying that the rights of asylum seekers in this case supersedes those of local citizens is exactly the wrong type of messaging to be put into the country at the moment. When you've got the tensions and the simmering resentment and the raising the colours campaign, which is going on at the moment, and forgotten millions who feel that they're losing their place in society, their status in society, and are furious at the broken immigration and asylum system, that is exactly the wrong message to be putting out. And I think actually the government would have been better simply to say, we accept the decision of the first court, we're not going to appeal it, and now we've got to work on finding a resolution.
I agree. Holy Paul, thank you ever so much for joining me. You're a fantastic man. It's great to have a voice of reason and someone to sometimes say, oh, Alex, you thought this through. That's always important. Challenge, Alex. It's just, I don't know, though. I just don't understand what was ever wrong with a normal refugee camp. I really don't. I don't. We seem to be by ourselves in the world on this one. They're not being given 4-star hotels in Greece. They're being given a mat on the floor. And the Nightingale hospitals. We can, if we wanted to, if this government had the guile to do this, we could set up within a matter of 2 weeks a highly secure, mass occupancy refugee camp. We could do it. I know we can. Because where there's a will, there's a way. And there is no will. That is the point, isn't it? Right, we're going to take a short break now. But don't go anywhere, because I'm back just after this.
in Q1 of 2025, there was 451,000 properties up for listing, of which 70,000 of those were ex-rentals. So if they're ex-rentals, it means those landlords wanted to sell them.
Yep.
And if they wanted to sell them, they wanted to sell them with vacant possession because they would get more money. And that means tenants are being asked to leave, whether it goes to court in a broken system or whether they leave voluntarily. It's a worry, you know, because landlords are needed in this industry because people need to sleep somewhere.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
All right. Brilliant column, can I just say, in The Sun newspaper today by my inspiration, my muse, Ms. Julia Hartley-Brewer. She writes excellent columns on a weekly basis, and this one today, it reflects everything that we all think and feel. And she asks, is Britain expected to give refuge to the world? And she's right about this. You know, Paul Embry before the break saying, you know, we need to sort of process people offshore. And you heard at one point the left kept saying, we need safe and legal routes to apply for asylum. No, we don't. No, we don't. Why do we have to look after people from rubbish countries having rubbish lives? I feel sorry for them. You don't have to be a sociopath or a psychopath and say, ha ha, up yours. But you don't have to say, OK, if your country is poor, if your country doesn't have good health care, if your country's got a mad leader, then you can come and live here. Frankly, actually, with those particular thresholds, that's us, isn't it? We should all be asylum seekers because this country hates us. We're being run by a tyrannical despot who, as soon as the proverbial hits the fan, is nowhere to be seen. I remember after Southport, where was he? And when he does finally appear behind a podium, he shouts abuse at us. We're actually more qualified to be asylum seekers than anyone else. You know, I don't want to go into my bathroom because, you know, Jake the Peg might be there with his third leg. I'm the one being traumatised in my own nation. People are being sent to prison for tweets. But actually, you know, Juliet points out, are we offering refuge to the world's 8 billion people who live in nasty authoritarian regimes? Everyone impacted by conflict. What about the 1 in 10 people on the planet who live in extreme poverty? And actually, if you were to broaden this out, because a lot of asylum seekers suddenly decide all of a sudden they might be, you know, gay in a country that outlaws homosexuality, you do realise that there's about 3/4 of countries on the planet. So basically, under the standards that we seem to offer people, which actually go as far as their kid not liking chicken nuggets and stuff like that, every single person on planet Earth who wants to come here and be in a 4-star hotel absolutely deserves to come. She makes an extremely good point, and I think we've got to get tough. We've got to get tough. We've got to be like Denmark, who's just we're just not taking asylum seekers anymore because why should we? Why is it our responsibility? Why is it? Why is it that some beardy weird is now running Syria that we have to allow everyone from Syria over here? We didn't put them in there. We didn't do that. It's nothing to do with us. What's going on in Eritrea is nothing to do with us. What is happening in Sudan is nothing to do with us. These countries, I'm sorry, they have had decades of independence. You know, Singapore, right, once a British colony, got its independence, and look at it. That's going along great guns, isn't it? Brilliant economy, very high trust society. They're managing just fine. So just because some other ropey country that may or may not have once been part of the British Empire can't seem to run its own affairs, I'm sorry, it's got to the stage now that that's no business of mine, sunshine. Most countries gained their independence in the 50s and 60s. You've had plenty of opportunity to sort your stuff out. If you can't run your own country, I'm sorry, that's on you. That is on you. It's not on me. It's not my fault that you got some mad leader who's nicking all your money and using foreign aid checks to buy private jets. We do enough. We do enough for you. That don't mean you get to come and live here. I'm sorry for you. Look, if you're a poor, innocent person caught up in a bloody war, then I genuinely do feel extremely sorry for you. And as a Christian, I do echo the belief that on an individual basis, if someone comes to me in need, I'm going to do what I can to help them. Because that is how we are taught to act as Christian individuals. It isn't a government manifesto of how countries should act towards other countries. This sort of strange politicisation of the Bible is mad. You've seen today, what's-his-face, Cottrell, turning around and saying, oh, it's terrible what Nigel Farage has said. That's not British values. As Christians, we need to help other people in need. We're not talking about policy here, Sunshine. There's a definite division between church and state. We don't have to sort of transpose this idea that on an individual basis you've got to be nice to one another to the UK has to be nice to every single mad, despotic, war-ridden, poverty-stricken regime on planet Earth. That's not how this works, mate. Oh, for God's sakes. Archbishop of York, Stephen Cottrell. That's the latest to wade into the debate from the Church of England and muddy the waters. Put a sock in it, Sunshine. Right. Let's speak to Herbie, who's in Harrow. Hi there, Herbie.
Good morning, Alex. I need nice to get it off your chest.
No, so I tell you, I don't know actually whether doing this job keeps me sane or actually traps me into a sort of constant centrifugal vortex of despair.
Well, Alex, the country is on a spiral downward turn and it isn't getting any better. We're being run by clowns and idiots that do not live in this world. They do not have a clue. And I'm afraid that we're all paying the price for it.
It's not they just don't have a clue. I'm beginning to come to the conclusion that if you're somebody sitting there running a deportation centre where 2/3 of people have come from prison, therefore are likely to have committed pretty high-level crimes because you can probably wield a machete and nick a load of designer handbags and not even get a slap on the wrist in this country. So to wind yourself a custodial sentence means you've probably done something pretty bad that you're deemed so dangerous you have to be removed from the public domain. If you're sitting there running a deportation centre where 2/3 of the people in that centre are those people, and you are using your time thinking of how they can make sculptures out of balloons, you're ill. You're actually diagnosable, from my point of view. You're actually just ill.
Yeah, but Alex, doesn't that say it all? You know, they get rewarded for being that damn stupid, and then more like get a knighthood in the process for it because they thought of something, turned up with something that is of no benefit to anybody, only the illegal immigrants and the people there getting the services.
Yeah, no, I know.
That is all.
Like I said, it's not the lunatics running the asylum, and the lunatics are running the asylum centres. Herbie, thank you ever so much. It's always gorgeous speaking to you. Let's speak to another favourite of mine. It's Laura Jane from Hampshire. Hi, Laura Jane.
Hi, Alex. I'm just going to sort of say it in one go, so if you wouldn't mind.
Oh, yes, hold on. Let me sit back and...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to you anymore. Now, do you not think it's time to look at this leftist ideology and say, actually, I think it's a plot? I think we can try and justify, we can try and debate, we can try and discuss, but this is the only answer. Break up Britain, divide Britain, and break us normal folk so that all the stuff that's going on isn't just the way they're running the country. It is a plot to divide us, and they're doing a very good job of dividing us. They really are. And yes, we're all thinking we're going mad. And you're right. Sometimes I hate to say it, but I sometimes have to ration myself listening to talk because I get myself into such a state. I don't know how you guys survive, but I do get in the state. I think they are doing it on purpose, and I know I sound like a loopy-loo.
But I don't think you do anymore. I don't think you do anymore, actually, because, you know, there's the old adage, isn't there? It's either conspiracy or cock-up. And you kind of think to yourself, these decisions being taken are so insane. They're so destructive to this country. They're so beyond anything that anybody ever thought was the way to go about governing somewhere, that you kind of think either somehow by some freak of nature a load of mentalists have suddenly got into positions of power, And by some freak of nature, they have no self-awareness. And by some freak of nature, they've gobbled up a toxic ideology that the West spent about 3 decades actively trying to fight during the Cold War. Or there's some sort of actual plan behind it. Because you kind of get it. Can it really be that mad? Can it really be that mental by accident?
No, that's the point. And this is why we really do have to join together and think as a group. And I'm not just talking about talk radio, I'm thinking about all normal, sane people. We really do have to resist, because what with digital ID coming along, once that gets through, they've got us. And everyone's going to say, oh, it's a conspiracy theorist to say they'll be stopping our bank accounts. You won't be allowed to buy meat. You won't be allowed petrol. All of these things.
But why? If this is a conspiracy, why? Why do they want to destroy the greatest civilization on Earth that has been responsible over the previous millennium, essentially, for every single life-changing development? Because I tell you what, whether it's the steam engine, whether it's aircraft, whether it's computers, the internet, vaccines, democracy, whatever it is come out of Anglo-Saxon and Christian culture. Lord Jane, we've got to go to break now, my darling, but it's always great catching up with you, and stay strong. We're in this together. Right, let's take a little break now. After the break, I'm joined by one of my besties. I love her. She is brilliant. She's a rising talent. And not only that, you get to enjoy her on air tonight, sitting in for Mr. Kevin O'Sullivan. Don't go anywhere. Samara's after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there and welcome back. You're in for a treat, because normally the slot on my Friday show at this hour is occupied by my misanthropic former television husband, Mr. Kevin O'Sullivan, where we sort of get the wheels back on Kevin Alex and go at it together like two lunatics joined at the hip. But because he's away on holiday, enjoying himself with Henrietta and Chaz the dog, his producer has been acting up, let's say, and sitting in for him, and is going to be presenting his show tonight. So we've got Samara instead. And do you know what? I ain't going to lie. It's probably a bit of an upgrade. Certainly far easier on the eye. Welcome to the show, Samara.
Thank you for having me, Alex. Oh my gosh. No, it's very much just an asylum when I host the political asylum. So I'm just warning everyone that. But thank you for the intro.
Oh, are you knackered this morning, by the way? Because we were together last night, weren't we, doing the show last night? And I'm sort of like, oh, it's a bit of a quick turnaround, isn't it, when you're sort of back in for mid-morning?
Yeah, worse. I was doing our sister station in Australia, Sky Australia, this morning, and they were bombarding me with things about Farage. And I was like, oh, it's Farage mania over here. That's all I can say, but because it really is. They're fascinated by what's going on in this country.
I'd be fascinated because we make a really interesting sort of mass hysteria, collective derangement test case, don't we? Let's talk about the royals, because normally that's something that Kev loves to vent about. I normally don't really give it much attention. I just can't be bothered. But they do make for gripping entertainment, don't they? And what we've now learned is Prince Harry is set to come back to the UK, and it seems to me there was that summit, wasn't there, that sort of secretly photographed meeting of the aides, which people suggested was all about a sort of a détente between the House of Windsor and the House of Sussex. And it seems to me that it might be on the cards that he hangs out with his dad next time he's over.
I mean, I think it might be on the cards, but I know that Meghan will be absolutely nowhere near those meetings. I mean, that woman and her relationship with his family is a no-go. I think it's really interesting to see this professional divorce that him and Meghan are having. I mean, he was absolutely nowhere to be seen in her Netflix cooking show that came out this week. They haven't really been pictured together for a very long time. And whenever he does come to London or England, he's always alone. She doesn't want to step foot in Britain. I mean, I feel like her disdain for our country is completely, it's sort of, she's always saying how much she hates it. I mean, even when she sat down with Bloomberg this week, she spoke about how difficult it was when she was living within the royal family. She had to wear pantyhose, and apparently that was some form of oppression for her. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. So yes, Harry's here for a charity event, but Meghan, she won't be coming anytime soon.
Oh, well, what a shame. I was so looking forward to standing there and giving her a posy of flowers and being able to be in the presence of greatness. My life is going to be ever so much worse for learning that. Let's talk now about Essex Council, right? They're apparently offering support to staff who are traumatised by Operation Raise the Colours, by people who might have seen the national flag put up around the streets and on the motorway bridges of Blighty. They're going to offer these people a safe space because Lord knows that's going to give you PTSD, isn't it? I mean, what are they going to do during the World Cup? Dig mass graves to put these people in?
I mean, they probably aren't far off that, because it's really interesting, the wording of this email that was sent over to Essex Council. I want to read it out. It says, while these symbols may hold different meanings for different people, we recognise that for many, particularly our colleagues of colour, that the flag can evoke feelings of discomfort and be associated with anti-immigration rhetoric. I mean, what type of Orwellian hellhole nightmare are we living in right now, where there are emails that are having to be sent out about our national flag? This is our national identity. It's being deliberately eroded. We've got staff sort of warning that the sight of the St. George's flag, cross or Union Jack might unsettle them. I mean, it's just absurd, Alex. Like, this is the flag that men and women died for. And now it's being told that it might unsettle people. Where are we? Where are we as a country that is the position that we're now taking?
We're ill. This is what I'm saying. We're ill. I think we should actually there should be some sort of international study done on the British, because we've gone absolutely postal. And somebody who seems to recognise this and has recognised it for a while is good old JD Vance. Oh, we love a bit of JD. Sensible man came over and holidayed in the Cotswolds. The wrong side of the Cotswolds. He went to the Oxfordshire bit, which is where all the sort of the posh people go. He needs to come down the Gloucestershire bit where the real people and the farmers are. But he said that people need to push back against the crazies who object to flying the English flag in yet another transatlantic intervention. Can we just ask him to come and run us? We're like, you got Donald in America, right? You don't need to. Just have Donald. He's more than enough. Can we have JD, please?
Can we have JD? Because our second in charge, I mean, after what came out this morning about her evading the 40,000 quid on her own property for her stamp duty. I don't want our second. I cannot believe that we're existing in a parallel universe where Angela Rayner is our second in charge and they get JD Vance. It's completely unfair. And the Americans are laughing at us. Seriously.
I don't know if they're laughing at us. I think the Americans are really, really worried for us, actually. I think to the Americans, we look like the batty old grandmother who's caught walking around Safeway with her knickers round her ankles at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I think when I say laughing, I mean laughing or crying, because their flag is a massive bastion of their culture. They are not afraid to fly it everywhere. When you go to America, the nationalism there is fantastic. They are proud of what their forefathers fought for. And they see us as sort of this crumbling, sort of hollow version of ourselves. And JD has had to step in multiple times. I mean, he got involved in the Technology Act and got some of our rights put back on the chart, but we shouldn't have to have an American deputy standing up for us right now. But we do, because they know that our rights are being completely pushed back in this country, and they're just watching from the wayside.
Yeah, and they're probably thinking, oh, gosh, do we carry that mental gene as well? Please help us, America. JD, if you like the Cotswolds, I've got a spare room, mate. Come stay with me anytime. Please help us. This is a direct appeal to the government of America from Talk Towers, from the British people. We're in trouble. We're in trouble deep. Please send help. Samara, tell us what's coming up on your show tonight. Woohoo, I'm so proud. I cannot tell you how proud I am of you. I really mean that from the bottom of my heart. I just love you so much, and I'm so proud of you. And I want every single person listening right now to tune in tonight, because it's going to be a stonker of a programme. Let me know what you're talking about.
Look, we've got the Epping appeal at 2 p.m. That's going to be released, so we'll definitely have some reaction to that. We've got Elon Musk has kind of been in the zeitgeist again this week. We're going to have his dad talking about what's actually going on with that man. That's someone who knows him very well. We've got this horrific story of a male model. He's an American guy who was staying in Berlin. And interestingly, I mean, I know it's something very close to your heart, Alex. There was a woman that was being harassed on the bus, and he stepped in to help her. And he got his face slashed in by a Syrian national who had just recently come to Germany, and his life has been destroyed. So he's going to join us live from the hospital and tell us all about that experience. So that'll be really interesting. I mean, we've got Blexley. Obviously, it can't be a talk show without Blexley. And we've got so much more. We're also going to have Meghan Markle's brother chiming in about how he felt about her cooking show, because apparently he's watched it all. And he said to me this morning that during his childhood, she never stepped a foot in that kitchen in their household. So I'm really wondering where the authenticity there is.
All I can say is, Samara, you've become like the Dick Van Dyke of Talk Towers. You're like a one-woman band. You know, you're the best producer, you're the best presenter. Basically, no one needs anybody else. You should just sort of, you know, give all of us a long holiday and just run the airways, book your own shows, present them all, vision mix, talk in your own ear. Because, frankly...
Don't hate me. Ted, I can see Ted fuming behind the glass right now. He's the best producer.
Oh, Ted's little malicious eyes are flashing with evil. I can see them. Oh, yeah. Don't you worry.
There's no competition, Ted.
Oh, no. One day Ted's going to run all of us. We've got to be nice to him. We all know that Ted's going to be the big boss on high, and the sort of, you know, kind, cuddly teddy bear face is soon going to become the image of a despot. Samara, I can't wait to listen to the programme tonight. I love you, and good luck.
Thank you, Alex. See you.
Right, take a break now, Alex. And don't know, I'm talking to myself. Take a... That's it. That is the key sign of mental illness, when you start talking to yourself live on it. Take a break now, Alex. And when you come back, Alex, you're going to be speaking to Cormac Smith, who's a former advisor to the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry about what is going on as Russia has been essentially bombing the British Council in Kiev. Oh, they like a bit of provocation, don't they? What happens next? Let's find out after this.
This is the nightmare type of thing I used to wake up to on a weekly basis in number 10 Downing Street. You would have a clue that this stuff was going on. A third-party provider, an independent company that has a long, really expensive contract with the government to look after these people until you can do something else with them, especially if they are known criminals and they need to be deported from the country as soon as possible. And I would sit in my office and think, how the hell has this happened, and how the hell does it happen on your watch?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and welcome back to the show. Now, earlier on, I put a call out to the Prime Minister. Where are you? Why aren't you talking to us? Rome's burning sunshine, and yet again you seem to have gone AWOL. Oh, no. Don't you worry. When it comes to geopolitics, he suddenly pipes up. It's the only area that he feels he's able to talk and have a political opinion, because he's a rubbish Prime Minister, isn't he? But he's pointed out that Putin is trying to sabotage peace hopes. There he is. Oh, Keir, you said something. You there, are you, sunshine? But anyway, I actually do agree with him because Putin sent 629 drones and missiles into the Ukrainian capital, the second biggest attack of the entire war. He targeted civilian buildings. 3 girls aged 2, 4 and 17 and a 4th child were among those killed. 48 people wounded. 5 children aged 7 to 17. But not only that, he also did a double tap, as it's called, on the British Council building. This is in Kiev, where the British essentially have a place there where you can go learn the English language and, do all British-related stuff. I don't believe that this is done by accident. They know what they're doing. They like to taunt, they like to troll, they like to disrupt, they like to provoke, they like to destabilise. It's all a game of psychological warfare, amongst other things. So what happens next? Well, let's speak to Cormac Smith, who's a former advisor to the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry. Cormac, the second biggest attack of the war, once again aimed right into the heart of Kiev and also into the EU quarter, if you will, where the EU have their offices, the British Council have their offices. I mean, Putin is essentially playing a big game here, isn't he?
Good morning. Look, you're absolutely correct that this was not by accident. A number of the missiles used in this attack were precision munitions. So I'm almost certain it was deliberate that both the British Council and the EU mission were hit. I think what this tells us is the absolute disdain which Putin and the Kremlin hold Western democracies, hold Keir Starmer, hold Emmanuel Macron, hold other EU leaders and other European leaders. Could I say there's 3 lessons I think we finally need to take out of this attack? And the first one is that diplomacy simply does not work with Russia. Russia only understands strength. The second is our leaders are slow learners, and I include Keir Starmer in that. Keir Starmer talked about Putin sabotaging peace. Putin sabotaged peace over 3.5 years ago on the 24th of February, 2022. And Mark Rutte made some similar ridiculous statements about we need to stop being naive about Putin and the Kremlin's intents. It's time to wake up. And the third thing I have got to say, Trump has 0 credibility. We can forget about his boasts to bring peace and his vaunted relationship with Vladimir Putin. But we must finally wake up to these lessons.
Well, if we wake up to these lessons, what should our response be? Because the thing is about Putin, he knows what he's doing. He's there provocatively going, come on, have a go if you think you're hard enough. I'm not going to put bombs on your soil, but I'm going to bomb your buildings in Ukraine. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? And the problem is with Europe is, it seems to me, we don't know what we're going to do about it.
Well, a good friend of mine and a colleague, a former colonel in the British Army, said in an interview only yesterday, it's always $1 too little and $1 too late. I've been saying since before the full-scale invasion, I coined a soundbite as a communicator. I love my soundbites. Arm Ukraine to the teeth and sanction Russia back to the Stone Age. We've not done that. We've always given Ukraine less than they need, and we've always given it to them slowly, and we've tended to give it to them with handcuffs on, and the sanctions are still not going far enough, although we do know now that the Russian economy is creaking. I am afraid to those who would say that we must persist with diplomacy, that is not an answer. We have a threat which can only be dealt with by force. And I would remind our viewers that it was the last Minister of Defense of Ukraine, Alexei Reznikov, who said 2 months in December 21, he said to the world in a CNN interview, he said, "We don't need or want your boots on the ground. Just give us the weapons we need and we'll do our own fighting." We still have not given Ukraine everything they need, Alex.
I always find it remarkable when I hear European leaders say, we must apply stricter sanctions to Russia. I'm like, hold on, you're telling me that that lever can still be pulled a little bit further and a little bit further and a little bit further. It's like flying towards a motorway collision and sort of, looking at your handbrake for 10 minutes before you decide to pull it.
We still haven't taken all Russian banks out of SWIFT. We still haven't gone after the shadow fleet of nearly 1,400 oil tankers, which allows Russia to continue exporting oil, which is basically their only source of income, and it's how they are funding their war, still earning in the region of between 20 and 30 billion dollars per month, despite sanctions. Now, we know we can go further on sanctions, but we also need to arm Ukraine better and faster. Now, this is happening. What is absolutely clear, despite the aspirations and the hopes of some earlier this year with Donald Trump's various peace proposals, is this war is not going to end anytime soon, because the Russians will only accept a complete capitulation of Ukraine. And I never tire of reminding people what a very good friend and a senior Ukrainian diplomat said to me in the early days of the war. He said, "Cormac, it's very simple. If Russia stops fighting, there will be no war. If Ukraine stops fighting, there will be no Ukraine." And Vladimir Putin has told us, and continuously, that what he aims to do is to wipe Ukraine and Ukrainian identity off the face of the map. He considers it a false country, and he has no compunction with wiping out tens of thousands, as he did in one city, Mariupol, alone in the early days of the war. He has no compunction with wiping out tens of thousands of innocent civilians to do that. We need to wake up, and we're still not. Nearly 4 years in, as I said, our leaders, and I include Keir Starmer, and I include Macron, and I include the new German Chancellor Merz, and I include Mark Rutte in this. They're slow learners. It's past time for words.
They're pathetic. They're from a generation of European leaders that are just weak and spineless and frankly not fit for purpose. And Putin's got the measure of the lot of them. He knows. He knows the rubbish leadership we've had in this country. And you're absolutely right. When it comes to America, America's got past form, frankly, in wading in at the last minute and claiming to have won the Second World War on behalf of everybody, but spent a damn long time ruminating over whether they wanted to come and help their Western allies. And it seems to be the same again. And problem is, the European leaders keep scuttling over to Washington going, please help, please help, please help. And in some respects, I do have some sympathy when America looks at Europe and says, well, do you know what? Before you come with a begging bowl to us, how about you learn to help yourself first? And I remember it took about 6 months for the EU to decide to even put a single sanction on Russia at the outbreak of this invasion. I remember how Germany prevented countries who wanted to sell weapons to Ukraine from either reselling things that they had given to those countries, or even allowing them to cross German airspace. I remember how tawdry and pathetic and mealy-mouthed the response was from Europe. And you're right, Cormac, nothing really seems to have changed. They talk the good talk, they wear their snappy suits, they stand on podiums in front of backdrops at summits and say, say we've got to take this seriously. And it's like, well, why don't you say that to yourself in the mirror every morning? Cormac, it's fantastic catching up with you, darling. I've got to let you go because we're coming to the end of the hour and I've got a hard out. But let us catch up on this again next week, because I think it's about time we put attention back on Ukraine and didn't get Ukraine fatigue, because it is so vitally important to the security of our continent and our Western values. OK, we're going to take a short break now, but I do come back after the break because there's one more hour of communal catharsis to come.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, welcome back. Shall we just go back to the heart of everything today? The story that basically has me stuttering and stumbling and rather lost for words, because just when you think that Britain can't get more mental, it does. I mean, I'm still sort of having shockwaves, reverberations from revelations about that Motability scheme. People are given a car for not being able to have a poo. About 1 in 5 cars on our road has been given to somebody from some spurious medical condition. It's like, we're about to go cap in hand to the IMF and you're just like doling out vehicles to anybody who's got some sort of I'm totally for people who genuinely need an adapted vehicle because they're physically disabled and need to be able to take their kid to school or take themselves to appointments. Having my help, I'd drive them myself. But handing out free cars to people, even to alcoholics, right? People who have alcoholism have got free cars. And I thought, this is peak mental. I mean, this is just absolutely tonto at this point. This is craze. And then you learn that, they're giving sort of, special sessions and therapy support and safe spaces to anyone who's been traumatised and triggered by the sight of the St. George's flag. And I'm like, what? What? And that's not even talking about the fact that we've lived through the whole idea that some Bert with a massive beard claims to be a woman and wants to compete in the Olympics and, squeeze their package into a bikini in the ladies' changing rooms. And we're all told, that's very normal. It should be celebrated. I was like, what? And then, of course, it was that Frankenstein tower. making kids take hormones and chop off their genitals. And I'm like, that's child abuse, right? And I was like, what? Like, really? I mean, seriously? And then, of course, it's breaking the protocol that no longer is what every other nation on earth uses as a refugee camp, i.e. canvas, with basic sanitation, enough for the so-called asylum seekers. No! Give them boutique hotels. Give them freebies and perks and discounts. Let them work on the black market. And I was like, what? And then today, the only way I can describe it is it's peak what? Because, front page of The Sun, a deportation centre, a removals centre. So these are people who have been told, you ain't no asylum seeker, sunshine, off you go. Or, actually, even worse than that, 2/3 of the people being deported are fresh out of prison. And we all know to qualify to get a custodial sentence these days, you've got to have done something pretty dreadful. Or tweet, of course, but I don't think any of these foreign people being deported have criticised the government in this country. Probably love the government most of the time. Bend over backwards for them. So these people are being deported. So a lot of them are probably quite violent and dangerous to society. And they're in a removal centre where they stay for the best part of a month before they're stuck on a plane with armed guards and all the rest of it, because they're that much of a threat to go back from whence they came. And then we learn that there are adverts on the Home Office website and on the website of the commercial contractor Mighty, who run this place, advertising for people to come along and teach these residents, as they call them, residents, like it's some sort of care home or like it's Butlins, to teach them how to flower arrange and braid hair and make balloon animals. And I'm like, I don't get it. And I just cannot fathom how there's so many clearly deranged people who really need their nuts examined running things like removal centres. How has this happened? How have we become that mad as a country? We do need to be a special text case. There needs to be people who are writing theses around the world on what happened when the British went balmy. They say mad dogs and Englishmen go out in the midday sun. We've just gone full-blown rabid at this point. Honestly, I think countries around the world should come over and send psychologists and diplomats. Send help. We're the asylum seekers, OK? We're the ones who should be asking for safe passage to a third country, because Britain, my friends, is a really weird, confusing and scary place. And it's becoming traumatising to live here. Let's speak to a fellow Alex Wilson, AM, Reform UK, London Assembly member. I mean, mate, like, it's bad enough when it's, putting these asylum seekers into hotels and saying, oh, do you want to learn croquet while you're there and all that madness? These are hardened criminals we're supposed to be deporting that some wise egg seems to think needs to learn how to make a giraffe out of a balloon. What is going on?
Yeah, absolutely. When I first saw this story this morning, I genuinely thought it was the 1st of April, because you simply couldn't make it up. Yeah, it's bad enough, and we've talked at great length about all the handouts that the illegal boat crossing people get when they come here, and the hotels and the dentistry and the GPs and 3 meals a day and all that. But these are people that are supposed to be on the way out. They're in a removal centre waiting to be kicked out of the country, the very small number that actually do get kicked out. And yet here, there's more freebies. You honestly couldn't make it up. It's absolutely balmy.
But also the infantilising nature of this. There's something that's gone on in the West where everybody seems to want rainbows and bang your saucepans and clap for the NHS, and you can be what you want to be, and you can imagine you're a cat. And even if you're there trying to mollify a load of hardened nut jobs before they're put on a military aircraft and taken back home, you might chuck a therapist into the mix. But in what world are you like, oh, I know what these evil men might like that will help them on their way as we send them back. Let's make balloon animals. It's like Sesame Street.
Yeah, it's absolutely well, I say you just couldn't make it up. It's April the 1st. Every day in this country, it feels like we're really infantilizing everybody. And balloon animals. Honestly, I mean, it's not something that in any way, shape, or form can help with the deportation of hardened criminals and illegal migrants who have no right to be here. Let's focus on getting them out of the country and then getting the next load out of the country as well. Not all this childish, utter drivel. It's just insane.
It is insane. Whoever came up with this actually needs to be clinically examined. Probably sectioned, quite frankly, because it's just beyond the pale. And do you know what? I've got a real bee in my bonnet today because I've been sitting in this studio for 2 hours now. Oh, yay, everyone. Woohoo! I'm in the part of the show now where I'm not earning money, I'm paying for migrants instead. Yes. I've been sitting here, and in the little Cape Canaveral studio we got set up here, we've got TVs which are showing what the other broadcasters are putting out on their news programmes. And the BBC are rattling on about Gaza, of course they are. Previously they were talking about someone who wrestled a crocodile in some law case. Sky, I don't know what Sky is doing, probably nothing. Oh, they're moaning about migrant hotels, moaning about the people protesting about migrant hotels. And yet to me there's this massive story today that I haven't seen either of them cover in the last 2 hours. And that massive story is our Deputy Prime Minister. The person who's going to run this country if Sir Lego Head goes AWOL, which most of the time he is anyway, because he's a weak-willed, yellow-bellied bonehead. The Deputy Prime Minister, 2 weeks ago, living in Ashton-under-Lyne, her constituency of the people are the people I really love and represent, suddenly decided, actually, that she permanently lives in an £800,000 holiday home and therefore isn't having to pay £40,000 worth of stamp duty. Not only is she the Deputy Prime Minister, she is also the Housing Minister. Now, I remember these legacy news channels here when Boris Johnson had a mate pay to put some wallpaper up in 10 Downing Street, screaming bloody murder and asking him to resign. That's all we heard about. Gold wallpaper, gold wallpaper, gold wallpaper, gold wallpaper. And I thought, I don't care. If he wants to change the wallpaper in 10 Downing Street as Prime Minister, go ahead. He's not asking us to pay for it. Some rich mate of him has offered. Fine. Whoever comes in next can change the wallpaper again. I don't care. And yet they thought that this was enough to topple the person democratically elected to lead this country. Now we have the Housing Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister gaslighting us, evading tax, cockily going, oh, it's all within the law. And nobody's even covering it. And I think this is a massive blimmin' national scandal. I think there should be parliamentary recall. I think the good folk of Ashton-under-Lyne have every right to say, if you don't live here, you don't represent us. So do you know what? We don't want you anymore. And yet this leftist bunch of legacy media enablers, the Starmer bootlickers at the BBC and Sky, they don't even want to mention it.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't going to criticise Angela Rayner for having a second home, and I certainly wasn't going to criticise her for drinking wine on the beach, because that would be incredibly hypocritical if I was to do that, because that's something I like to do as well. But what I will criticise her for is the tax dodge, and I think that's where the hypocrisy has come to light. And we have a government that is taxing ordinary working people more than ever before. We've got the highest tax burden since the war, got small businesses really under pressure, jobs being cut every month because of Rachel Reeves' tax hike in the last budget. We're going to have more tax hikes in the forthcoming budget. It's obvious that that's what they're going to do, because they simply will not rein in public sector spending. And yet here you have the Deputy Prime Minister making these changes to the paperwork so that she can avoid paying a stamp duty bill. So yes, I will criticise her for that, because that's the hypocrisy. That's where when Keir Starmer came into Downing Street, just over a year ago, he said he'd be leading a government of service. It's not a government of service. It's a government of self-service. It's champagne socialism, champagne for them, socialism for everyone else. So yeah, not going to criticise her for having a second home, but absolutely I'll criticise her for avoiding tax on it.
Oh, it's an abusive government. They are abusing us at this point. They are telling us we're nasty, that we're far right, that we have to dig deep to pay for all of their madness, that you're going to be taxed if you're a landlord, even if you're earning just £1,000 a month. You know, that was going to be your nest egg, your retirement plan instead of a pension. Get a bit of rental income to keep you going. Oh, no, you're going to be taxed. And at the same time, they're audaciously swanning about getting their third homes costing almost £1 million, not paying tax. I don't care. I don't care if this is within the bounds of what is legally permissible with our hugely complex tax system and all the paperwork that comes with it. I don't care whether this should land her in court or in jail. What I care about is the ethics. What I care about is the content of her character. This is the woman who repeatedly called people in the Conservative Party scum. She is one of the biggest inverse class snobs I've ever come across, with a potty, nasty mouth and a vile attitude towards most people in Britain to match. And this, as the Deputy Prime Minister in any other country, she'd be gone. She would be gone. They've just chucked out their Prime Minister in Thailand for ethics. This is a matter of morality, and that woman should have no place sitting on the green benches. She should not carry the title of Deputy Prime Minister. It is an absurdity and a mockery that she is the Minister for Housing. She needs to go. And what's more, all this legacy media who were calling for the scalp of Boris Johnson 5 years ago need to wake up, read the newspapers and ask themselves where their judgment is now, because it is lacking. Journalistic judgment lacking, moral judgment lacking. When you've got the Housing Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister gaslighting us, not paying taxes, the rest of the country is on its knees being consistently whipped by the Treasury for more, for their dreadful governance of this country. This sticks in my core. Rayner, you are scum. That's how I feel about this. Glad I got that off my chest, actually, Alex. Meanwhile, can I just say, can we have JD Vance instead? They've got a really great deputy leader over in America, and it turns out he's quite worried about us, Alex.
Yeah, well, he's been commenting on this whole issue of people raising the standard, raising the colours, people taking pride in their country and wanting to fly either the Union flag or the Cross St George. Two absolutely amazing flags. I have both of them in my Twitter bio. I think they're brilliant. I think they're a real, people want to have pride in our country, and it should be encouraged. And it's a real shame that some of our politicians here don't seem to share that view. And we've seen yesterday this ridiculous email sent from one of the senior officers at Essex County Council. Essex County Council, supposed to be a Conservative council, for God's sake, one that avoided having their elections this year. Quite deliberately, because they knew that they'd have been swept away.
Angela, my good friend Ange, didn't she? It was our Ange who gave them the get out of jail free card, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, but it was the Conservative council leader that made that request to be included in the ones to be cancelled, along with Norfolk and Suffolk and Hampshire and all those other ones. But no, they would have been swept away by the turquoise tide of reform, just like we saw in Lancashire and Lincolnshire and Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire and all those other places. So they've avoided the elections, they've avoided the wrath of the electorate. But things like this mean that when they finally do get to face their electorate, which they will do at some point, we don't know exactly when, but they will do at some point, they are in for one hell of a reckoning. And I'm looking forward to being helping that campaign to get them out. Essex is the county I was born in. I grew up there, and I definitely want to see that being run by a reform council, and I'll be doing everything I can to help that happen. And this just adds further fuel to the fire.
I mean, I saw something quite remarkable today, actually. Election Maps UK on X. They sort of consistently cover all the various polling. They're like an accumulator, if you will, of data being gathered in various constituencies and opinion polls across the country. Is now saying that Reform is leading by 16%, their largest ever advantage in an opinion poll. And if you translated this into seats, this is astonishing. We've gone from having a two-party state since time immemorial to actually now, I think, approaching being a one-party state. Because with the current polling, with Reform 16% ahead of everybody else, the Labour Party lose 343 seats and win only 68. The Conservatives lose 107 and win only 14. And Reform gets over 400 seats. 407 seats. To Labour's 68 and Conservatives 14. That is if the public went to the polls today. That is breathtaking.
It's remarkable. Now, look, politics is volatile business. We know, both of us, from our involvement in it, things can go down as well as up. But certainly the position we're in now is very, very strong indeed. That poll that came out earlier this week, 16-point lead, the largest we've ever had. Now, my friend and your friend, Gawain Tola, he always says, never believe a single poll that makes you smile. So, yes, take it with a little bit of a pinch of salt. But look at the trend. The overall trend is dramatic. We've now had over 100 consecutive opinion polls since the middle of April that have had Reform either in the lead or joint in the lead, and that lead has been widening. We're seeing it replicated in council by-elections as well. We didn't quite manage to win a seat yesterday, but we're only 5 votes short. But since the general election, we've made over around 70 net gains in council by-elections. The bulk of those have come since Kemi Badenoch was elected as Conservative leader in November. So it's very, very clear that both in the polling and in real votes, in real elections, in real ballot boxes, it's Reform that people are looking to as the alternative to get rid of this Labour government. Because people remember how shocking the Conservatives were. 14 years of failure, broken promises, high tax, net zero, lockdown, open borders, and then 14 months of Labour being even worse. So that's why there's this huge opportunity for Reform. I'm really looking forward to our conference next week, where we'll be setting out in more detail some of our plans and ideas and the vision for turning this country around, because we're on a mission to save this country, and it looks like more and more people are getting behind that mission. And yes, it's going to be a long 3 years to go till the next general election, but we'll keep building, we'll keep fighting, and that way we'll keep winning.
Yeah, I tell you what, I'm beginning to think, I didn't believe it before. I didn't think there was any credible way for us to go to the ballot box sooner. But I think things are so bad, Alex. I think you guys better get in election shape and get that machine oiled and ready to go sooner rather than later, because I'm beginning to think they ain't going to last the whole term. Alex Wilson, thank you ever so much for joining us, London Assembly Member for Reform UK. Would you like to join me? Please do, because I almost broke a blood vessel in my head shouting about Angela Rayner. I've actually got a throbbing, pulsating pain in the back of my skull now by getting so angry. I could do with a deep breath and someone else helping carry the load a bit. So would you do that for me? Please. 0344 499 1000. Go on, give a girl a break, would you? It's not your normal network rate. Keep me company. It's nice. Can hang out. It's all good. Nothing to see here. No flies buzzing around my head. Promise. I'm all right. I'm not unhinged yet. Do help. 87222 is the number if you'd like to send me a text message. And I'll speak to some of you after this.
Moving 200 people to Rwanda wasn't going to stop people getting on boats.
It was going to be a significant impact in terms of people knowing that they would be refused entry on a permanent basis to the UK. We spend a lot of money on it. Julia, I served on the committee. I was in Parliament. I know the
250 people.
It was
250 people being sent to Rwanda was not going to deter 28,000 people arriving.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back to the show. Let's hit up the phone lines first of all. I've got Sean in one of the most beautiful parts of the country, Durham. It's where my dad's from. It's where I went to university. It's where I used to live. It's a brilliant place indeed. Huge fan of Durham. It's where the Pink Panther comes from, don't you know? Hi, Sean. How are you?
I'm worried about you, like.
I'm worried about myself, son.
I think you've lost your Tory mind, like.
I don't have a Tory mind. I never had one in the first place to lose.
You have, man. You work for the Sun newspaper, you Tory, man.
Hold on, I don't work for the Sun newspaper.
Tory TV is run by the Sun newspaper, right?
Hold on. Let me just do a fact correct here, okay? Because I know my own life and my own brain. My previous world was being a Brexit Party MEP, and before that I worked for UKIP. So that is definitely not Tory.
That's why you're around the twist. That's why the country's in the state it's in.
Oh, that's right. I forgot Nigel Farage has been running the country for the past 20 years.
Farage.
Yes, it's him. I forgot that. It's his fault. Man. That's right. How on earth did he mess up the country so much as Prime Minister?
Farage is an alcoholic, man.
He's an alcoholic now, is he?
Yes, he is. He's an alcoholic. He's a half-wit. He'll never get in touch with this country.
Have you seen the polling?
To hell with the polling, man. They done that about the Tories and they got kicked out of power, man. You're round the twist, Alex, man. You always have been. Get yourself... I don't know how your husband puts up with you.
I don't have a husband. Probably why the boyfriend won't marry me. Doesn't he puts up with me either, to be honest.
Probably your wife, then. Righto, then. Bye.
That was weird. Oh. Yeah, there he is. Was. Oh, well. I used to think Durham was just full of nice, sane people, but apparently not. Anyway, do you think he's noticed that Durham Council is now under the control of Reform UK? Do you think that news has got to him yet? Because I don't think... Maybe he's been in a coma and he's sort of woken up. Or maybe it's me. Like, I honestly do think that, you know, with everything how mad it's got, I'm sort of like, am I just living in some sort of dystopian virtual world? You know, it's like one of those Hollywood movies where I'm actually some sort of brain in an incubator and all of this stuff is sort of not actually happening. Because according to Sean, Nigel Farage is the one who's messed up the country. And yet he's never run it, as far as I can tell. Anyway, there you are. That was Sean in Durham. Durham is still a wonderful place, by the way. Let's speak to, she's a good friend of mine. It's Georgina in London. Hi, Georgina.
Hello, my darling. I think I'm going to have a stroke, Alex, if I hear any more madness, let me tell you. Listen, there's a few things I want to say, Alex. I want to get it off my chest, and then I'm going to get out of your hair, because people are probably sick of hearing my voice on your programmes. Can I start?
Yes, please.
Thank you. OK, until these illegal migrants are paying the bills of our country and the wages of our useless government, they should not be prioritised above one single British subject. I cannot understand what part of we don't want them integrated into our communities this government and civil service don't understand with regards to illegal migration. I'm also concerned by the fact that this worry has not been acknowledged by the Prime Minister. It's only human nature for people to be worried about their wives, their children, when faced with strange men being ushered into their community, and within a short space of time, children and women are being assaulted. This is monstrous behaviour.
Oh, I agree. But you're sort of suggesting that the Prime Minister might actually be in some regards a human being. I'm beginning to doubt that that's the case.
Well, the thing is, Alex, this is putting the residents within the vicinity on high alert, especially when it's not only their passports that they're dropping, and that's in front of our women and children. This is a very serious issue. It didn't take long for the government to arrange for Nightingale Hospital containment units when the COVID debacle was in full flow. And we need the same secure units to contain our illegal, unwanted visitors until the public feels safe walking the streets of Britain without the apprehension of being attacked. This illegal immigrant situation is going to be prevalent until the government actually acknowledges the concerns of the British public. The worries and unrest within the British population is only going to increase. The government needs to prioritise the safety of the British population. This should be their main concern, as this is what we're paying them for.
Oh, no, I totally agree. Everyone in pretty much every single person in the country, apart from maybe Sean in Durham, totally agrees with you as well. And but I don't know what's wrong with these people, Georgina. I really don't. Like I said, I think I'm the one living in a parallel universe because it just doesn't even make sense to me anymore. I don't. It's just gone beyond anything that I can rationalise or fathom at this point. Georgina, thank you for calling me and offering me your support. I always love to hear from you, my darling, and you speak so passionately, and it gives me a moment where I get to sit back and let someone else let off the steam on my behalf. So I really do appreciate you. Thank you ever so much for giving me a bell. Let's do some messages as well. You know, the dashboard here in front of me is like flashing 1,000 different colours. I think there's a lot of calls waiting up to be put through at some point. Let's see if we can get a few more on before the end of the show in half an hour. Joe, who's watching in Thailand. Lucky you, mate. Please tell us, how did you just get rid of your Prime Minister? Can you give us some advice on that? I'm just wondering, are there any jobs advertised for someone to go into the hotels to teach these illegal migrants on how to behave towards women and young girls in this country? I bet there isn't. Joe, I bet there is. I wouldn't be surprised if there is a scheme like that, actually. The country is upside down, inside out, and on its very last legs. We must not give up. Well, I don't think we are, to be honest. It takes a lot for the British people to, you know, actually get out and protest. We are an incredibly resilient, patient load of people. We invented queuing. Patience is our fortitude. We show the rest of the world what it's like to have a stiff upper lip and wait in line. So when we suddenly go, right, that's it, to the streets, lads, you know that we have actually reached tipping point. There's a brilliant poem, actually, by Rudyard Kipling that someone sent me the other day called When the English Began to Hate. I'll see if I can dig it out and maybe read it after the break, because, or at least a bit of it, because it sums up the state of the nation right now. Robert says, Alex, the lunatics are running the asylum. Yes, and the asylum centres. Alex, I completely agree with you. What the hell has happened to our country? If the government were a company, they would be sacked, deport the whole lot, or put them in a camp. I know. I think I don't want to, brag or anything, but I'm going to. I've been saying for ages now about the Nightingale hospitals and how if it was possible to create these buildings overnight with camp beds in during COVID, that was good enough for sickly people suffering from an unknown virus. Why is it that a similar thing can't be used as a secure base for these asylum seekers as deportation centres? And I've noticed actually now a lot of people talking about what about the Nightingale hospitals? What about... So good, I'm glad that's getting through. Maybe it will get within the thick cloth-eared head of Salego Head, wherever you are, sunshine. Nightingale, yeah. Did you know what? You can build something pretty quickly. And I've got another idea for you. Maybe you should put this in your policy pipe and smoke it. I was at one of those... the storage places the other day, those big storage facilities. And I've never had one myself. And I happened to go in one with my other half. And it was amazing, cavernous, labyrinthine, subterranean world of air-conditioned units, lighting, there's bathrooms, and they go on for miles underground. And I was like, that would work. You could put people in there. I mean, there's plenty of ideas I've got, mate. If you want to come and meet me for a pint at some point, I'll give you more. In fact, here's an idea. Why don't you go and see what a refugee camp looks like? You love gallivanting around the world, don't you? Doing the big Mr. Geopolitics. How about you go and see how every other nation on earth accommodates refugees? Because it's been the sort of international standard for about a century now. And I'm pretty sure that we could probably get that rustled up in the matter of about a week. There you go. There's an idea for you, Kia. OK, got to take a short break now, but when I come back, I'm going to be joined by the Executive Director of the Henry Jackson Society, Dr. Alan Mendoza. He's a brilliant man. We're going to be talking about, it's going to happen, isn't it? These horrible ISIS Beatles are all going to end up back in the UK, probably making balloon animals. Can't blimmin' wait. That's after this.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Now, I promised before the break that I was going to read a poem. I know, I should go and work in that deportation centre, shouldn't I, and have sort of literature therapy. But it's a very good poem by someone that the left hate, Rudyard Kipling. Of course, he's like chief racist amongst the lot of them. But in this poem, he's talking about the British, their tenacity, their patience, their resolution, their integrity, their tolerance. And it's a striking poem because it really does foretell where we have arrived at a nation. So let me do my best to read it in my most proper university-educated voice. It was not part of their blood. It came to them very late, with long arrears to make good, when the English began to hate. They were not easily moved. They were icy willing to wait till every count should be proved ere the English began to hate. Their voices were evened and low. Their eyes were level and straight. There was neither sign nor show when the English began to hate. It was not preached to the crowd. It was not taught by the state. No man spoke it aloud when the English began to hate. It was not suddenly bred. It will not swiftly abate. Through the chill years ahead, when time shall count from the date that the English began to hate. There you go. Right, talking about the English beginning to hate, I'll tell you what's really going to ruffle our feathers, and that is if members of the ISIS Beatles, those 4 disgusting, depraved jihadis who were cutting people's heads off in Syria, butchering people in the most brutal medieval fashion imaginable, pure evil they are, if they end up winning their appeal to be transferred to British jail, where no doubt they will learn to do embroidery of kittens, sing Kumbaya, and join little Islamist cults, I think that really is going to upset the Brits. Let's speak now to Dr. Alan Mendoza, Executive Director of the Henry Jackson Society. We stripped them of their citizenship, and rightly so, but it seems to me the Americans seem to think that, for whatever reason, we should have them back. But it was the Americans who wanted them tried over there. Do you think they're going to be successful?
Well, that depends on the British government, doesn't it, Alex? If the British government sticks to its guns and says these aren't British citizens, these are not people who have any connection anymore with this country, we're not going to take them back, then I suspect we won't get them back. If, though, there is some kind of, sort of falling down again, the craven appeasement that we see the whole time in British foreign policy these days, then it'll be a different story. And, I know we want to stay close to the Trump administration, but there are bits here where we as an independent nation must say no to, and this is one of them.
I totally agree. And we all know, of course, I don't think American prison's particularly cosy or comfortable, but I worry about UK prison. They're sort of saying, oh, I want to be close to my family. I want to see my friends. I mean, these are the most disgusting, violent, dangerous, showing no remorse, sociopathically, absolutely broken, evil human beings as imaginable.
Right. So why would you even consider this is beyond me. These are treasonous individuals who took up arms against their country, who beheaded innocent civilians, in Syria. Their crimes are heinous. They are, their souls are blackened. There's no benefit to having them here. We should just say no.
I worry, though, that, I don't know where international law stands on all of this, but that seems to be the script, the Bible, the Holy Book and the Testament that Sir Keir Starmer and his good mate Lord Hermer used to make all of their decisions. Do you know if there is any sort of international provision once we've stripped people of citizenship that could trip us up and make us have to receive these people?
Well, they could try their luck in the courts, like Shamima Begum did, of course, but that didn't work for her. The courts upheld the government's decision to strip her of citizenship. I'm sure they would, because there's already been case law applied, I'm sure that this would go a similar way. So it's therefore a matter of political choice rather than law. But here, Alex, is where I would make this point. The government claims it's always bound by legal matters. For example, it claimed it had to give the Chagos Islands back for that purpose. But when it comes to things like declaring a Palestinian state, it has openly admitted this isn't a matter of legality now, because legality would be against it. You're actually breaching international law by doing that, because you have no conception of what that state looks like. And they've admitted it's a political choice. So my fear is they will make a political choice to have these people back, whereas I think Donald Trump will appreciate a bit of British backbone here to say, no thanks, we don't want these people at all. You can do what you want with them, including putting them to death as far as we're concerned.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's actually Sebastian Gorka who's sort of a key advisor to Donald Trump, who seems to be suggesting that the United Kingdom has a responsibility to take these people. And, you know, just when you think, well, the government really won't want things to look much worse, and they're in a very tricky position when it comes to the Home Office challenge of the legal ruling over the Bell Hotel in Epping Forest, just when you think they're not going to make a ridiculously terrible looking decision again, they do. And I you know, it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if we capitulate over this.
Well, it should only surprise us in the sense that it would be an extremely foolish political move to make. The idea that people in this country would welcome these people back in some way, shape or form seems to me a highly unlikely outcome. So, you know, any political pressure coming from this would only be from the Trump administration. And as I said, you know, I think we've seen examples that Donald Trump respects people who stand up for themselves in the appropriate way. And this is a very easy thing, I think, for us to stand up on and say, no way, not going to happen.
I agree. Let's hope that common sense prevails, although it seems to be in very short supply when it comes to the people running the country. Thank you so much for coming on the programme, Dr. Alan Mendoza. Let's do a couple of messages. David Leyland says, notice the shift in language, calling our flag a symbol. It's subtle, but a subliminal thought adjustment, similar to using irregular instead of illegal migration. They did this during COVID too. You're right. This whole idea that it is a symbol, no, it is just our national standard. It is our flag. The idea that it therefore has all these other connotations, these representations, these interpretations that other people might feel triggered by, this problematic other narrative to it. No, it's just a blimmin' flag. And this is it. They feed into it, don't they, by using this language. They play around with words to try and brainwash you, to hypnotise you into becoming some sort of adherent of their crazy, warped ideology. Very good message indeed. Peter in Lincolnshire says, I could think of better things to teach illegal migrants. For one, pothole filling, litter picking, long-distance swimming back across the channel. I've often said this, these men sitting around in hotels, if they want to earn a bob or two, which frankly they don't need a bob or two because their accommodation is free, their food is free, everything else is free, so they don't really need any money, do they? But what they should be doing is actually working if they're going to have taxpayer-funded accommodation. I don't understand why they aren't there with litter pickers, going around grass verges, getting Coke cans and Haribo packets. I don't know why they aren't being made to scrub graffiti off walls that looks unsightly in our towns and cities. I don't know why they aren't pushing mowers along grass verges to make sure that they look a little bit better kempt. I don't know why they're not filling potholes or cleaning toilets, because if they were genuine asylum seekers with wanting to integrate and give back to the country that is giving them refuge, they should have no problem in doing a little bit of work from day to day as a thank you for the hotel accommodation. But no. No. These poor darling lost souls, they can't be made to do that. The poor little preciouses. Let's take a call, shall we? This is Vina in Epping. Hi there, Vina.
Hello, lovely to talk to you. You're really great.
Oh, cheers, Vina. How's things down in Epping, my love?
Oh, God, yes. It's all going on, as you know. But what I wanted to say to you and to any presenter, what if you lied on your CV and you told lies in your job, what would happen to you?
Well, I don't think I'd have a job for much longer, to be honest.
Well, you'd get the sack. So what are we waiting for? The government have done nothing but this, have they?
Well, no, this is it. Look, if in all honesty, and I'm not trying to incite insurrection here, but I've got to the point, there's no point shouting outside a migrant hotel for the migrants to go home. They're not going to suddenly listen to people and go, oh, yeah, do you know what? I will do that, actually. I actually think now, if people are so upset at the way this country is being governed, that they need to be saying to the government, you are the ones that need to go. And I'm not saying do anything violent. I'm not saying do anything deeply disruptive. But I do think that actually it's come to a point. I despise this government, and I'm not sure how much more the British people can take and how much long-term destruction.
This is it. But you would get the sack if you did this, what the government's doing. You would be sacked.
I know. In fact, to be honest, I mightn't get the sack for having said that. But I do think that...
And another thing I wanted to say, these young men, these come over in the boats, they're young. Obviously, they're going to be frustrated. Yeah. Their women they're just like ghosts, don't they, in their country? Yeah. So when they come here and see girls with a bit of leg, a little bit of bust, this is where it's going to go. This is what's going to happen because they're going to be frustrated, and people, you can't take that away from them, can you?
But also, not only are they frustrated, they come from a culture where the ideology and the teaching is that women have to dress modestly and cover themselves up to account and accommodate the frustrations and urges and inclinations of men, because Lord knows the men can't control themselves.
Yes. Well, I hope you join the new committee that's going on. I'd love to see you there. It would be great for us because you're so open and you're so direct with what you're saying. Is completely us, the women, the people of the country.
Oh,
well, I'd like to thank you for that. And the person that phoned in to be rude to you, well, he can go to hell for all I'm...
Oh, come on now. I'm a Christian. I wish no one goes to hell. That is God's purview only. I love everybody, frankly, and he's from Durham, so therefore he's a good egg. I definitely enjoyed listening to his accent, I must say. Reminded me of my old man, who is also from Durham. I spent a lovely 3 years living in Durham at university there. Then my first job was at ITV Tyne Tees as well. I went back because I love the North East. It's my second home. Vina in Epping, it's been a delight speaking to you, my darling. I really do appreciate your call. First time I've spoken to Vina. I always like it when we get a first-time caller. It's really nice. Going to take a short break, and then I'm joined by a brilliant political strategist, one of the most erudite young men I've ever met. He's a fascinating brain of calculation and strategy. He's a great man to go for a drink with as well. There's not much that he doesn't know. It's Joseph Robertson. He's on after the break.
This is the nightmare type of thing I used to wake up to on a weekly basis in number 10 Downing Street. You would have a clue that this stuff was going on. A third-party provider, an independent company that has a long, really expensive contract with the government to look after these people until you can do something else with them, especially if they are known criminals and they need to be deported from the country as soon as possible. And I would sit in my office and think, how the hell has this happened? And how the hell does it happen on your watch?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there and welcome back to the show. Now, some people might know that I'm a bit of a god bother. I do like the late great JC. Got baptised actually not that long ago. Put my money where my mouth is. And so I take a keen interest when I hear the Church of England entering the public debate on government policy. Because and even though I still got my L plates on, for my basic understanding so far of the Bible, there's one thing and one thing alone that stands out. It is about international independent agency, right? Jesus died on the cross to save us as individuals, to bear our shame and to save us from our own sins and set a precedent in how we must behave as individuals, because we have free will. And essentially it's like dig deep, be good. When someone is in need, you go and look after them. You are the good Samaritan. When someone is horrible, you turn the other cheek, etc. But it's always in reason. When you listen to the teachings and the parables within the Bible, he's not saying, you know, be a wet blanket and let people walk all over you. He's outlining essentially when to be tough, when to fight back, when to stand up for your values and what is good and what is right. I also think he was the very first feminist, quite frankly. He came along and said, you know, the way that the ancients treated women weren't so good. Men need to respect women, and this is going to be the covenant of which you should live by to make sure that the sexes look after one another. But he also said, most importantly, and this is the thing that all these people in the Church of England, all of these, robe-wearing archbishops who seem to want to throw in their two-bit on government policy should be minded to remember. Because I don't remember Jesus in the Bible telling the Romans what they should do or how Nazareth should be governed. No. I remember him very distinctly saying, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. He deliberately doesn't go near politics. Instead, he is there to try and encourage the individual to individually behave in a moral and altruistic fashion. So that means if someone comes up to you and is in need, and you can see that they're desperate and they're hungry, that you try and feed them. And that is absolutely right. It also means, though, that you're not an idiot and you let the wolf through the door if you think they're going to attack you. I don't think Jesus would say, like, well, if someone wielding a knife and who wants to murder you and kill you asks for a loaf of bread, give them the loaf of bread and let them stab you. No, he's not saying actually just lose your mind and be absolutely delinquent towards your own personal safety. But the most important thing is render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. He didn't involve himself in politics. So why people like Archbishop of York, Stephen Cottrell, feels the need to blast Nigel Farage's plan to deport illegal immigrants as not the Christian way and beneath us as a nation, he doesn't seem to know the first thing about Christianity. Let's speak now to Joseph Robertson, a great man and a great brain indeed. I am so sick to death of the Church of England acting like some sort of moral arbiter of government. That is not what you're supposed to do. Henry VIII didn't get us out of Rome to have this lot act like mini popes in our own country.
Well, I mean, thanks for the introduction, firstly, Alex. This topic is a incendiary one, whichever way you look at it, because firstly, the church should not be getting involved in politics, as you quite rightly said. But secondly, the extent to which they are themselves already involved in politics is the thing I wanted to talk about almost immediately. I mean, you've got what calls itself a church, but is essentially one of the world's largest green hedge fund managers, opining on the fact that Nigel Farage has gone too far. I mean, they are essentially a political body in and of themselves at this point, so surely it's fair game to treat them like one. If we're going to talk about Bible quotes, I mean, one of my favourites is from Timothy, where the letter to Timothy, where St. Paul says, if anyone does not provide for his relatives, and especially for members of his own household, then he is worse than an unbeliever. So I would remind the bishop that charity starts at home, and that actually what we're dealing with is a crisis that is relevant to our own nation first and foremost. It's relevant to all of the victims of mass immigration, all of those girls sacrificed on the altar of mass immigration over the last 25, 30 years, for basically bleeding heart, open borders, woke, anti-Christian, in my opinion, epithets, about, let's call it what it is. It's handbag bashing over what we can quite clearly see would have been a normal policy even 30 years ago.
But it's interesting, isn't it? Because they've got a very selective way of regarding Christianity and the teachings of Christianity, because the Church of England seems to love getting a trans flag out from time to time. Now, I don't think Jesus went around saying if someone thinks they're born in the wrong body, persecute them. But under no circumstances did I read in the Bible anywhere this idea that women can become men and men can become women, and you know, gay people should be able to get married. I'm sorry if that's an unpopular opinion, but you know, if you do read the Bible, it kind of says the opposite. So you can't have this selective application. Say, well, you know, some stuff that it doesn't make sense anymore. We've got to revise it. It's a but then turn around and go, oh well, this no, Jesus wouldn't like that.
Well, I mean, you know, the Bible is quite clear. In his image, he created them, male and female, he created them. I mean, you can't get clearer than that, can you, on the transgender issue? So if the Church of England is going to redefine the literal word of God, then it's got an issue. With all this stuff, I mean, what we're really looking at, again, is the politicisation. I think at the moment it's fair to say that the Church of England in particular is being used as another branch of the state. It's essentially another BBC. It's a way of this leftist kind of narrative getting out. I've just written a piece actually on the Fabian Society, which I think is one of the most untalked about bodies in this country that has done so much damage over you know, the last, well, let's call it 140 years. But what we're finding is that a lot of their thinking, particularly on this stuff, which is essentially socialist as gradualism, is creeping not just into the judiciary, not just into the political field, but also into these figures, these woke bishops, these pieces on a chessboard, who essentially are just another arm of the state. And we've got to call it out for what it is. It's mass conditioning.
No, I totally agree. It makes me sick to my stomach. I mean, I love the Church of England. I love what it represents. Long may it thrive. But these meddling bishops, my lord, meddling archbishops don't have a good track record in this country at what happens to them in the end. Joseph.
Well, they don't. No.
Yeah, right, let's remember that. Joseph, thank you ever so much. So good catching up with you. Listen, I've got a little bit of news here that I have been sent. The latest attack by a pro-Palestine faction, it's a group called Shut the System, has been levelled against one of the biggest think tanks in Westminster. Policy Exchange is the name of the think tank. It's a conservative think tank, have been very instrumental in guiding government policy for successive Conservative governments. And apparently Shut the System have violently attacked Policy Exchange's offices. They've sprayed the building with red paint. They've smashed the windows. So no, it's not just military bases now. Oh no, these Gaza sympathisers are now going and attacking establishments and edifices in the heart of policy making. But it's interesting, isn't it? They're not attacking the left-wing policy makers when it's a Labour government, and the Labour government are the ones responsible for our policy. No, let's just wantonly go about and vandalise anything right-wing, because that's what it is at the end of the day. Hello, Mr. Collins.
Hello.
It's been a while. I haven't seen you.
It's been a while. You've been in your sick bed, haven't you?
I have, mate.
Yeah,
I have. I was finally getting some money, some tax recompense from the NHS.
That's what you need, isn't it?
Actually, I didn't. I just got a packet of pills, but you know.
And laid there and watched Love Island.
No, I sat in A&E for best part of 8 hours.
Did you? It's a nice experience, that, isn't it?
It really was not.
I did that a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it's.
You literally lose the will to live.